think Dr. Danfus is here with us.
Morning.
Yes, I am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I think it's 9:01. I think we can get started whenever you are ready.
All right. Hey, everybody. Great to see you. Can I ask you all to mute your mic? Not speaking. A little feedback here. And I just wanted to say thank you all for showing up today. And Alyssa, I guess you're organizing this, are you?
I am.
You're very good. Thank you for doing that. I love the title of A Day of Caring. Sounds like it's a half day of caring, but I know you guys are caring all the time. And so I really appreciate you all getting together, thinking about ways that we can help our students in the coming days, weeks, and months as we start a semester unlike anything we've ever done here before at Arkansas State. I'm actually on vacation right now, but I wanted to pop in just to thank you all for being here. And I'm going to stick around when I can, pop in, out when I can, just to see what's going on with you all. But I really just wanted to thank you all for being involved and for being so thoughtful about how we can help our students be more successful in the fall. Thanks, Alyssa. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you all for being here.
All right. Dr. Simons, did you have anything you wanted to share from the provost office?
I do. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us. We're already up to 77. I was about to say 76, and I expect the numbers to go up throughout the day. That says so much about our A-State community. We started with a motto when Dr. Danfus came that every redwood counts, and we're hoping A Day of Caring becomes an annual tradition for our campus because we know it's really the A-State community that's so involved in keeping our students here. And I just wanted to remind you that you can come and go throughout the day. But if you're a part of our new first-year Mentor 100 program, I certainly hope you join us for the very last session today, where we talk a little bit more about that. So enjoy, and we're so glad that so many of you are here to join us.
Okay, well, we are already a little bit ahead of schedule, but we can go ahead and get started. The first thing on the agenda is the Howler speed sessions. So I'll just explain a little bit about what these are going to be like. It's kind of similar to the oral presentations that we know and love from Learn at State, where each unit in the group will get 5 minutes to kind of give their presentation, and I'll be keeping track with a timer that will howl at us if we go over. And so if you have questions during any of those presentations, you can ask them in the chat, and we will do a question and answer at the end of the three units presentations. We'll do a question and answer at the end for that whole Howler group, and then we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. So to get us started is PAC support, which is me. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the share. And let's see. Okay, so I will go ahead and start my timer and get started. I'm Alyssa Wells, and I'm the Student Outreach Coordinator and PAC Support Administrator here on campus. And I just kind of wanted to explain a little bit about what PAC Support is. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's your one-stop shop for any kind of questions or problems or issues that may come up. You can, faculty, staff, students, community members, anyone can reach out to PAC support, and I'll either be able to answer your question or help you out, or I can get you to the right people who can. So there are two sides to PAC support. There's the community side, and then the PAC support for faculty or students. And let's start with the community side. This is on the website. You can find us at astate.edu. There's a box at the bottom that says PAC support. You can search A-State for PAC support or find us in the A to Z index. And this PAC support website, it has several ways to contact us. You can reach out directly by email at pacsupport@astate.edu, or you can contact PAC support here and find this form, which is pretty self-explanatory. You just put in your information, what your problem is, and kind of what you're looking as a resolution, and submit it, and I will help you out. You can either fill out this form or contact PAC support yourself on behalf of a student or for yourself, or you can refer your students to contact PAC support directly. It works either way. If you are concerned for the well-being of a student, or you think they are going through some emotional challenges, or they may be a danger to themselves or others, or something like that, you can find the PAC support behavioral safety form here. And this form is actually linked directly to the A-State care team. And we meet regularly and provide support and outreach to students who are in crisis. And you can complete this form, and it'll get to the care team, and we'll reach out and make sure that that student is okay. So that's the community side. This is anyone can reach this. If you're a faculty member or a student, you can find PAC support from my A-State. And I'm showing you right now PAC support as Howell, the instructor. And he is teaching 2 classes in the fall, and he wants to refer a student to career services to work on resume building for an assignment for class. So he can go to the students tab right here. And this is really handy. You can search students. You can filter students that you're connected to in a lot of ways. If you're an advisor, your advisees are all here and connected to you. Each of the courses that you're teaching are here. So you can either select all or select multiple and send a referral to all of them. It'll send a separate referral for each one. Or you can just pick a student individually and send a referral this way. If you're not familiar with this, this also provides you a lot of information about that student, like their academic standing, their advisor, their major, lots of different ways that you can find information about your students in PAC support. But if you click on this referral button, it'll pop up this menu where you can see all of the referrals within PAC support that you can make on a student. There's counseling center. If you refer a student to counseling, it doesn't actually, the student doesn't see what you say. It goes directly to the counseling center, and they make that outreach to the student. And then disability services, there are many, many referrals within PAC support that you can make on your student. But like I mentioned, I want to refer Howell, the student, to career services to work on resume building. So you select the referral you want. You can connect it to a course if you want to. You don't have to. Just put in your comment here. This will, in this particular referral, you can see the student can view this item. So if you put in the comment that I want you to go to career services and work on your resume, or get their help to work on your resume, you can type that comment here, and that'll go in the email that the student receives. And whenever you save that, you can find it again in their tracking items. So you can see that I've made this referral for Howell student to go to the career services, and this is connected to career services, and they can reach out to the student, and the student will receive an email and reach out to career services as well. So those are just a couple of ways that you can make referrals on your students through PAC support. So that is my time, and I will hand it over to Access and Accommodation. I think Blake is here with us. Blake, if you want to share your screen or whatever you need to do.
Let's see.
Whenever you get ready, Blake, I will start your time.
All right, I think I'm ready. Is my screen sharing okay?
We're good. Good to go.
So thanks for having us here. As Alyssa said, I'm Blake Walker. I'm Associate Director for Access and Accommodation Services. We work in the union. We work really close with PAC support, counseling center. We're kind of have our hands all over campus because we serve a pretty diverse range of students. So yeah, so any student with a disability, we can hopefully provide services for. Any student with a disability qualifies for services from our office. We also work with temporary impairments. So if somebody gets injured or requires a, heaven forbid, a health condition or a medical illness, they can come to our office and we can do what we can to help out. So the process for actually getting services to our office, we have an online application. There's also a paper application. We just need to get some basic information from them. And then, so this is kind of an interesting shift in our field right now. Typically, really strict documentation guidelines had to be adhered to. The field is kind of moving more towards less and less documentation requirements, because documentation has been proven to be kind of a barrier for a lot of students, especially students that are low SES that can't afford to go to a doctor or a therapist or psychologist. Assessments are expensive. But that being said, we have counselors in the office here. We can do some self-assessments. We can do some self-reports. We can refer them to services that are more affordable. So that being said, as far as referrals go, if you have a student that you think could really benefit from our services, don't hesitate to refer them to us. Regardless if they have documentation or not, we still want to talk to them. We still want to meet with them and see what we can do, where we can point them, what we can do to help them out. But yeah, so they'll meet with us and we'll do the intake. We'll talk about what accommodations and adjustments we can make for them. And then we'll notify faculty if need be. We'll notify other people on campus. So these are kind of the common services. This is by no means an extensive list of what we do. As you guys have probably seen if you've been on campus before, our golf carts can take people to and from classes across campus. We can do some classroom setup options. There's accessible tables and seating. I'm sure everyone is probably familiar with alternative testing, extra time or minimum distraction, or even if we need to change formats of exams to better suit that student's learning style. Alternative formats of material, so e-text and audio text, so students that are low vision or visually impaired, or even students that have some learning disabilities like dyslexia maybe need something different than just print on paper. That's not always the most accessible format. Note takers and mentoring, we can set students up with volunteer note takers or mentors to help them kind of navigate not just the classroom, but just campus environment. So, transitioning to college is a big deal from some places. Let's see. We also work really closely with a lot of off-campus sites, so like Arkansas Rehab Services for the Blind, a bunch of the counseling agencies around the area, some psychologists. Like I said, we have a couple psychologists that are really good to work with as far as referrals. They provide significantly reduced rates for assessments and even work out some payment plans. We've got one who is literally paying like $5 a month to pay off an assessment. And we also do training and consultation for faculty and staff on campus. So changes due to COVID right now, our services offered really haven't changed. It's just kind of our delivery method. We are primarily doing virtual appointments, but being the population that we serve, virtual is not always the most accessible. So we are here in the office now. We ask that students don't do walk-ins right now. Now, if they're in a crisis and need immediate attention, our office is a counseling center. But other than that, pretty much all the same. I heard my timer go off.
You can finish up. We're a little bit ahead of schedule.
Well, that's pretty much it. It's other than just our contact info.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Blake. I think we can go on to advising. Melissa, you should also be able to share your screen.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Can you see my screen there?
We can.
Perfect.
Um, let's see. If you have any questions throughout these presentations, remember you can ask them in the chat. And then Melissa, whenever you are ready, I will start your timer.
Well, we can get started. As our good friend Shane Hunt, Dr. Shane Hunt would say, it's a great day to be a red wolf. So thank you, Alyssa, for allowing us to join you. I'm the director of the Wilson Advising Center, and our primary mission is really just to work collaboratively with the campus community to enhance the advising experience. And we do that for our faculty as well as our students. We like to think of 3 simple words in the services that we provide, and that's advising our students, making sure that we are connecting our students with the departments and resources that they're needing to navigate their time here at A-State, and also providing an opportunity for our students who may be falling into some academic challenges so that they can restart their journey here at A-State. And we do that through a variety of services here. Walk-in advising is a service that we provide here in the Wilson Advising Center for our undeclared majors. Students will not have to have an appointment, and that's something that we will continue to do even though we are faced with COVID in the semester to come. We are going to provide drop-in advising, and so we will continue with our virtual advising sessions using a Zoom. There may be some students, however, that just prefer to have that face-to-face opportunity, and we will be practicing social distancing as our campus is for those situations. So our students are encouraged largely to set up virtual appointments with us or to come in through our virtual drop-in time here at the center. But if they are needing that face-to-face interaction, then we will provide that within some parameters as well. We provide student success workshops also. We work with students who fall into academic distress as well as the undeclared majors. And so a lot of our students need some support in balancing responsibility and understanding academic standing. So not to rehash some of the workshops that are on campus already in place of student success behaviors and study skills. We focus more on responsibility with our student workshops and helping students understand how to participate in the advising process. We also provide academic intervention for students who are on suspension. So students who are on a first suspension through the Restart program that is coordinated through our department have an opportunity to remain enrolled. And I'll show you a little bit of what that form looks like here. And some other services that we provide would be our faculty advisor trainings that are hosted in the month of September in our fall semesters and in February for our spring semesters. And we have several of those resources that are going to be online as well, because we know faculty are often competing with other areas for their time. And so we want to make sure that that information is available at their fingertips, at their convenience. Some services that we provide to the campus include our annual Select a Major Fair, where we are reintroducing for many the students the various departments and majors that we have as they are considering their options. We also assist with the registration days. We coordinate quite a bit of that. That's hosted for our students, specifically targeting our first-year students with overcoming any registration challenges that they may have. And we support our university with being the one-stop initiation for the student university withdrawal. In addition to that, Alyssa and A-State colleagues, we understand that every red wolf counts. So we have taken heed to that in our website and made sure that we are addressing information from several different angles, making certain that our parents are still feeling involved and that they have one landing spot to really interact with those various resources that help them support their students while they are here. In addition to making sure that parents are well informed and have easy access to resources, on our website we have a tab that is specifically for our advisors, and there our advisors are able to sign up for faculty advisor trainings. They're able to learn a little bit more about the advising awards that are provided on our campus, as well as how to work with students in best practices for specific student populations. And we'll have some other information there that will allow our advisors to tap into some of the practices that could be used as they're working with students, specifically during the COVID experiences that we're facing. More specifically, we have information for our students, because we want to make sure that they understand advising is a shared process and they should be actively engaged in that experience. And so our information for students are pretty much resources to help them understand their academic standing and their role in advising, as well as how to investigate or explore options and connections to career paths. So all of that information is readily available at the fingertips if you are working with a student and you're just uncertain with academic standing or uncertain on how to direct that student. We encourage you to direct them to our office, because we also work closely with tech support, and often Alyssa and myself, we're directing students back and forth just to make sure that they are familiar and getting connected to the right departments on our campus. Some things that students might reach out to you all for, and this is again on our website, are specific forms that they have to complete to take care of business here at the university. And if you were to go on our website, it's outlined pretty well there. So we have a tab that shows all of the various forms that students would need to complete for the various services that are coordinated through our office. Specifically, when students are being advised, of course, they have their four-year degree plans, but if they're wanting to look more at the basic courses, general education, maybe they're just not sure of the major they're interested in, then that is outlined on our website for them. Students who are wanting to drop all classes in a semester, they don't often understand that it's not just a drop, it is a withdrawal from the semester, which means it's only going to drop them out of all of the classes that they are currently enrolled in. And to do that, they have to complete paperwork. They're not able to drop their last class online. And so that process starts in our office, and we work collaboratively with various offices across campus to have students complete that process. Students that are enrolled through our online programs, they have a different process that they would use to make certain that that is completed. And so both of those withdrawal forms are on our website, as well as clearance forms for students who are on suspension and the appeals petition form for students who are facing other challenges or other circumstances and needing to have a university committee to review their situations for a different outcome than what our policies show. So quite a few forms that are on our website there, and we certainly would answer any questions that anyone would have. And if you just want to direct the students our way, we certainly encourage you to do so. One form in particular that I'd just like to share a little bit of information about, because this particular form is one that students have to complete if they're on a first suspension and wanting to continue here in the following semester. The students who are on a first suspension, their GPA has fallen below a 2.0. And in such situations, students would have to apply to the Restart program. You can see there on the screen that the application is outlined very detailed. We have students explore all of their business on campus, from financial aid to account business, working with their academic advisor, making certain they understand the housing accommodations and what have you. And then students are to submit that application to our office. So it's similar to a student going in and visiting with their advisor in an incoming semester as an incoming student, where they would outline the courses they're going to take and just make sure that they understand their financial commitment and have a means through the student account office by which they are willing to commit to covering that. Once students complete this application, they would submit it to our office and we would register them for their classes, and they would have additional academic support in that semester by participating in a 1-hour accredited course. We will continue that with our students in this fall semester, and we've made some accommodations considering COVID and the physical distancing that has to take place in all of our classes. We do quite a bit for the campus, and we have a small staff. With our undecided advising, because it is walk-in or drop-in our virtual world, our advisors are assisting students by last name, and you can see there we have an associate director in our office, and then we have 4 advisors that work with our undeclared majors. And we also support colleges with onboarding advisors, so advisors that are just starting here at the university in this role are trained through our office, and they will be located in our office if that is the option of the college for a period, and then they transition into their various departments. And so we also have one of the advisors in the College of Education and Behavioral Science who is currently in our office. And so again, students don't have to have appointments to visit with us. You can certainly direct them to us. Quite a bit of information on our website, broken down so that we can see every Red Wolf county, even our parents. And we're just excited about assisting. And again, thank you, Alyssa, for including the Wilson Advising Center and this day of caring.
Thank you. Okay, so now, let's see, we're going to go to questions for this Howler session, which includes PAC support, access and accommodations, and advising, Wilson Advising. And I think there was one question in the chat. Brad Rollins asked, with several classes, this was during access and accommodation. So I think this question is for Blake. With several classes now being offered in the Fowler Center and First National Bank Arena, are we planning accommodations for possible greater needs for golf cart transportation? So Blake, if you're still available, I think that would be something you could answer.
Alyssa, if Blake has left, I will collect these, anything that comes up today, and we will send it out. That's a great question. And if I could take just a minute on that same line, we are going to have students, I think our faculty want to know, we will have students that are going to have needs because they're in the high risk category, and maybe they can't be in classes this fall. They will be, the advisors or faculty will be notified of students that will need alternative arrangements. There'll be a variety of options, but just to keep that on your mind as another potential change for this fall is heavily what we're focusing on today. So thank you.
Also, I have a question for Melissa in regards to advising. Is it better to send a student who's not sure who their advisor is it better to send them to the college or degree, like that office, or to your office?
Thank you, Alyssa. Actually, if we are not sure what the student is going to major in, then it's always best to send them to our office, because those are the students that we advise. But if we're not sure who to send the student to and know the major that they're interested in, if you would go to our website, we have advising at a state on our website. And if you would click on that link there, you'll see the professional advisors for all of the colleges. And you would direct the student to that advisor, and they will certainly, if they are not the advisor for that student, they would help that student get connected to the faculty advisor in their college.
Right. And Melissa,
but again, if you're unsure, you can always send them to our office.
That's right. And I put the link in the chat box.
Yeah. All right. I think Gerard just asked a question. Dr. Simons, how does a student request alternative accommodations with instruction? For example, I'm working with a student who has not registered because they live at home with their grandparents and are afraid about COVID-19.
Okay, that's a great question. If a student meets the high-risk category criteria, then they go through the Office of Access and Accommodations, because it's a documented way that we know that they cannot be in the classroom. If a student is nervous, we have a lot of nervous students and parents, as well as ourselves, about being in the classroom, then they can work with their advisor to do the best they can to get in online courses. We have students all the time ask us, I need to be all online for reason X, Y, or Z, but we certainly will help them work with their advisor to do the best that we can to find courses for them.
Awesome. And I think Blake is here. Blake, we had a question earlier with several classes now being offered in the Fowler Center and the arena. Is there planning to accommodate for greater needs for golf cart transportation?
Yeah, well, we are working on assessing that need right now and looking at what students are going to be where and who's set up already with us. But if you know of specific students that are going to need that, please send them our way now so we can go ahead and get that set up.
Awesome.
I have a question, Alyssa. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, and this is for Dr. Simons. And she had just mentioned that you had mentioned that students may be scared to come to class and they may be wanting online. So if we have a class that's a hybrid class and we have that option to let them stay home every day during that class time and they're a freshman, will that matter with them having to be in attendance, or does it count that they're in attendance and online? Do we just make that decision and allow that, or does that have to go?
No, yes. In this, for the fall term, we know that students' anxieties, parents' anxieties, and students may not be high risk, but they may be in vulnerable populations at home or other things. We want to do the best that we can to accommodate alternative arrangements. If a student is not documented through access and accommodations, we can't guarantee that all classes will be offered to them online, but we will try to help them to meet their needs.
Okay, so if we are the faculty for that class, we can just make that decision and allow them to stay home and remotely come to class that way? Okay.
Yes, I think that would be a departmental and advising comfort level with that student.
Okay.
That we accommodate where we can.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And if there are no more questions, we're coming up on time for the next presentation, which is Dr. Allen. Dr. Allen, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can.
So I'm on with two devices. I'm on my computer. I'll share that screen.
Okay.
And what you'll hear me from the phone though, because my audio on the computer, something's going on with that.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Yvette Allen. She's the Executive Director of Multicultural Affairs and Inclusive Excellence, and she'll be presenting to us about engaging diverse student populations. Throughout this presentation, if you have questions, you can add those in the chat and we will have some discussion at the end of her session. So I will turn it over to Dr. Allen.
All right, thank you. I'm going to start a timer as well so I can try to keep it to 20 or so minutes so you all can ask questions at the end, because guess who doesn't want to get the how button? Okay, so again, Yvette Allen Moore, I have to get used to that. My pronouns are she and her. Current title is Executive Director, Inclusive Excellence in the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. And so today I'm going to talk to you all about mentoring students with attention to underrepresented identities. So before we get started with the actual session, I'll give you an overview of what I'll be talking about. And in case y'all don't know this, I'll have you all for about 20, 25 minutes. So in case after 5 minutes you tap out, you're like, the other ones were 5 minutes. So points for discussion. We'll start with a division overview, so you kind of get a sense of what's going on in our division, because there have been a couple of changes. And then we'll talk specifically about mentoring students with underrepresented identities, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions and answers as well. Thank you, folks. All right, so let's get started. So when you think about the division, the mission, as listed on the website as well, there is an attention, and the division is fully committed to a policy of inclusiveness, understanding, and acceptance of all no matter of your background or your identity, right? And so when you think about some of the things that are done in a division, you're thinking about equity and thinking about not necessarily equality, right? So I want to clarify something. In terms of equality, you're thinking about folks getting the same things. But when you're thinking about students and supporting students, all students don't necessarily need the same things to be successful. So a lot of what our division looks at is equity of policy practices, right? Our folks who are underrepresented getting what they need to be successful, as well as spaces for learning for all on campus. Okay, so you have an overview of the division. Here's a highlight of some of the areas. Think of community engagement is one area. We have an individual who works very closely with community partners with an emphasis on diversity, inclusion. An example is some of you may have gone to the Implicit Bias Conference that was last spring in February. And we partnered with a community group to do that, St. Bernard's Healthcare. The Beck Center for Veterans and Military and Veteran Student Success. You all probably know Beck Center. The name used to be Beck Pride, and now it is Beck Center for Veterans. And so this area concentrates on services and resources for military and veteran students, right? So military, veteran, dependents, spouses, etc. Then there's the area of multicultural affairs, which concentrates a lot on services for students, student learning, student leadership, multicultural organizations, peer education, those types of things. Then access and accommodations is in the division as well, formerly known as disability services. The new name is access and accommodation services. And Blake just did a wonderful job going over that, so I won't elaborate too much more on that. Then, of course, campus diversity initiatives also come from this area. One example of that is if you all did that campus climate survey that came out earlier in the spring, that is one example of some of the larger campus diversity initiatives that are done through this office. Our division staff, as you all know, Dr. Lonnie Williams currently serves as the Interim Vice Chancellor, Diversity and Community Engagement. And this is not all the staff in the division, but these are listed contacts for various offices. So you at least have those names. Dr. Lily Sears serves as the A-State Advanced Faculty Liaison. This is the individual who works with pre-tenure faculty who are in various underrepresented groups. They do different workshops, etc. Sharon Lee is the Director of Community Engagement, so works with a lot of our community partners for the diversity initiatives that we're doing in the community as well. I am Yvette Allen Moore, and I currently serve as Executive Director, Inclusive Excellence in the division. And so I work mainly with our student services areas, which include multicultural affairs. Some of you know that as Multicultural Center, and Beck Center for Veterans and Veteran Student Success. Linda Nash is the contact for that area, as well as access and accommodations. Dominique White and Blake Walker will be your awesome contacts for that area. So what do we do? A quick overview on what we do. I'm not going to go over all of it. You can kind of see some of the highlights there in terms of the things that we do on campus. This is not all encompassing, but just to give you just an overview of what we do. So various cultural programs. We do multicultural education, both peer education. We go into classrooms and do trainings, workshops for offices, departments. Leadership and success. So we work with multicultural organizations. We have mentoring programs for underrepresented students through the division. Also, we have non-traditional students, also post-traditional students and military services for students, various things, appreciation services for those students. We have women and gender initiatives. One example of that is the Safe Zone training that some of you have probably gone through, and then access and accommodations, which does some examples are classroom accommodations, note-taking, etc. A couple of other things, we do some recruitment and retention programs. I'm not going to go over all of them, but for example, A-State Connection, some of you may have participated in that, done a session for it. It's when we bring high school students from underrepresented backgrounds based on race and ethnicity to get a sense of what is campus life and academic life like at A-State to get them connected to our campus. We also do different awards and recognition ceremonies, thinking about, for example, some of you may have gotten the Excellence in Diversity Awards. So if you are doing great things in your areas, that may be a way that you recognize folks in your area. Any questions before we go on to the mentoring with attention to underrepresented identities? Let me see the comments.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat, so I think unless someone has any to add now.
Okay, perfect, because for some reason I can't see the comments box anymore, so thank you. Okay, so we'll go to mentoring with attention to underrepresented identities. And so in this section, I'll go over a couple of tips. I pulled out some, as you know, if you've ever chatted with me, I could sit here and talk about this all day. So I was like, well, what can I give them in 10 to 15 or so minutes? So I'll give you all a couple of tips in that area specifically. So let's start with this first. Why mentoring specifically for when you think about underrepresented identities? And this is not, again, all encompassing, but a couple of things I do want to highlight in this area. The first part is it increases retention, right? So if you're looking at literature, you definitely know that students with mentors are more likely to persist, right? They have some type of connection to the university, someone checking in on them, someone to help them along the way. It also creates a culture of value, right? This is someone, so for some of our students, they may be involved in leadership organizations, but some may not. And what are ways that they could feel heard and valued? And mentoring is one way. And so mentors, those who work with students, this will be a huge part, or those folks will play a huge part in helping students who are underrepresented feel valued on the campus. Also, opportunities become more plentiful for students who are connected in some way, and mentoring is one of those ways, right? So because mentors help students through campus resources and suggest connections for success, they're more likely to get different opportunities, right? So you might know about a job on campus, an internship, a scholarship, etc., right? So for example, again, some students that are connected to leadership organizations, they might get that information, but for those who are not, mentors will play a huge part in that. And so when you're specifically thinking about underrepresented students and getting them those resources, it is so very critical to have an attention to what they need. And so now I will go into a couple of tips for the area. So one of the first tips I have for you all is to learn important identities. Learn the identities that are important to students from underrepresented backgrounds. So for example, in one of your first or initial meetings, if you're mentoring a student, you might want to ask them what identities are important to them. This is important because you don't want to make assumptions about what's important to them. And while for some students, their underrepresented identities are really salient and important to them, for some it may be things that you don't think about. And so simply asking them that question will help you move forward, because you can use what you learn about what's important to them to connect further with them or to suggest various things on the campus. And you don't have to use the language of identities. It could be something as simply you asking the student, what's important to you, right? What about you is important to you? And that's a great way to start to help them moving through their time on campus. Also know your salient identities. I know a lot of times folks want to jump into helping other folks, but it's also important that we call attention to ourselves as well, right? And so as you're getting ready to work with underrepresented students, or if you worked with a group that you may have never worked with before, or you might be like, oh, I want to learn more about this community, know yourself first, right? So ask yourself the question, how would you describe you? And I don't mean anything in the sense of, you know, reflecting for hours, but what first comes to mind when you think about yourself? Most likely what first comes to mind is the lens through which you walk in life. And so being cognizant of that means that you know what lens you see it through. So you also know areas that you might not have a lot of attention to. And so that gives you a sense of things you might want to pay more attention to, right? And so, for example, if someone were to ask me who I was, I know that two identities that would be in that list would be the fact that I'm Black and the fact that I am a woman. And so knowing that may be a lens through which I see the world, also knowing there may be other areas I need to pay more attention to, right? So if I'm working with a student with a disability or a student from the LGBT+ community, I need to pay more attention to what those students might need, right? So asking yourself that specific question, how do you describe yourself, also calls your attention to what you might pay more attention to and helps you to then focus on things you might be missing in terms of attention for students. Also encourage exploration. A lot of times students in general, but specifically underrepresented students, you're exploring yourself in college, right? So recognize that a lot of students are getting to know themselves in college, and so be open to that flexibility and help work or walk them through that. And this kind of goes along with the next point of exploring resources, because when you're thinking about helping them explore their identity and who they are, right, be open to that. I think a lot of times folks are like, well, I really don't want to bring up or identities, or this is not the place for that because we're just concentrating on their, academics or their professional career. But students want to see vulnerability, right? They want to see that you care about them as a person, and part of them as a person are those identities that are important to them. So the explore resources part, become familiar with campus resources and refer students as needed. This is going to be so very important because you really want to hit that next bullet point. You don't have to provide mentoring by yourself. You don't have to be, and you won't be everything to them. You are a resource to them, but you don't have to be everything to them. But by knowing, for example, they may ask you something you don't know, or they may share something with you that you've never experienced. But if you know resources or folks on campus who may have either had that experience or could help walk them through or talk them through something, then you're helping them just as much by referring them to resources. Also know that you don't have to, I gotta hit that point, learn about mentoring best practices. And this doesn't mean that you have to go through 20 to 30 page long articles, but there are some short reads through things like Chronicle of Higher Ed. If you want, that's a starting place for learning some things. You want to get to reading other things, but if you need a starting place, starting with those shorter articles is a great starting place in terms of mentoring. And be honest about where you need assistance. You won't know everything. Being honest about where you need assistance is also calling things out, right? So if you don't share a certain identity with a student that is important to them, admit that, right? Let them know, be vulnerable with them. So they're like, you're trying, know that they know you're trying, but that you may not share those identities, but also be open. Don't use it as an excuse to say, well, I just don't know, but let them know that you're calling it out, but at the same time, you want to be open to learning, and that you will do your part in reading or whatever on your part to learn more about what is important to them. Also, provide professional and personal mentoring. Some students want to, but some may not. But for the ones who want to share personal struggles, when you think about students with underrepresented identities, and think about the lenses through which people see and walk through life, a lot of times people will recognize those things that are happening to them based on identities that are important to them. So if students want to share personal struggles, let them, because that will strengthen your relationship, because they also want to know that they're valued, heard, and that there is somebody on the campus who will help them through whatever needs or struggles they might be having. And students, particularly underrepresented students, want to know they have an accomplice even more so than an ally. A lot of you probably have heard the term ally in the sense of an individual who's not a part of a certain group, a certain underrepresented group, but is an advocate for, right? You want to be an advocate for lessening some of the inequitable practices or policies that are against some groups. But accomplice is even more so an individual who the student would feel like you were in it with them, right? So you probably heard the term have some skin in the game with them, right? So they want to know that you're there. So for example, this might be a person who you don't just send them to a resource, but you check in on them after they've gone to the resource. Or you might be that person that if they need help walking through a certain policy or practice, or they need to report something or talk through something, you're in it with them. So not just the referring, but also the checking in on them. If you need to go to meetings with them or advocate for them in certain spaces, they want to know that you're in it just as much as them, and that you have as much to lose as them. Also be cognizant of language is a tip when you're working with underrepresented students. For some students in that demographic, language is important, right? You want to ask yourself questions such as, is that inclusive, right? So when you think about gender as an example, some folks may use he or she, right? But you might have individuals in your area or that you're working with that don't identify as either. Or for another example, if you're referring to folks who care for children and folks use the term mother, well, there are other genders, or use the term mother or women, and there are other genders who care for children, right? And this is another area to read articles and get to learn more in that area as well. But language will be important to some folks in underrepresented groups. One of the last things I have for you all is to commit to a journey. When you learn more, apply that knowledge. You cannot possibly know everything, but committing to a journey, what's called a journey of social justice, is simply you saying, I'm committing to learning more and more each day. And when I know better, I will do better, right? This is not an excuse to say that every time you might do something that's considered offensive, like, oh, well, I didn't know, right? It is just your commitment to learning more and doing better once you know more about different things, and to commit to lifelong learning, right? This is something that you can't take one session and be done. You can't, take one class and be done. It's something you're going to have to commit to lifelong, because when you think about underrepresented students, there's so many students in those different categories that you might, for example, this year might be the year that you work with a student in a demographic you've never worked with. That is your opportunity to say, you know what, if this identity is important to them, and even if it's not, right, that's an opportunity for you to learn more about that student and their demographics, particularly those that are important to them. So this is, how much time do we have left, Alyssa?
We have about 8 minutes.
Okay. So we can, if there are any questions, we can do questions now, and I've left up the division contact information, and if you needed to get a hold of me specifically, my contact information is listed at the bottom there as well. Thank you.
There are a couple of questions here. Kelly Listenby asked, how do we help students understand how to take advantage of their mentors?
Yes. So there are a couple of things that we have tried. So as far as helping students understand how to take advantage of their mentor, one of the things we try to concentrate on is, well, what is the benefit that they get? Because I think a lot of times, for example, one of the mentoring programs we have from our area, we assessed students because we were finding that some weren't taking advantage of their mentors, and so we just asked them, what do you think a mentor is? And some of the feedback we got was that for some folks, they thought that a mentor was basically someone who told them what to do and what decisions to make on campus. And so then we kind of switched it to doing some sessions to help students understand how to best utilize their mentor, in which we kind of explain what a mentor was. And so that would be my advice, one piece of advice for that area. If there's either an initial meeting or something, whether that's an email, a call, that in that initial meeting that we're clear with students about what a mentor is, what you are there to help them with, and what the ways that you can help them in terms of, providing resources. I think if you're clear on that versus, hey, I'm here to tell you what to do and you have to do everything I say, right? Making that distinction for them has been a huge help for us, and opening up sessions for those who want to learn how to utilize their mentor, because honestly, for some, they just didn't know. We kind of broke some things down and said, here's some tips for using your mentor. For example, when you go to a meeting with them, come with questions, right? So in that first or initial meeting with some folks, you might tell them, just as much as I'm mentoring you, I need your help as well. Come to the meeting with questions. Look up something. If I'm helping you professionally, what's something you want to do? Because the more you help your mentor understand who you are and what you, oh, that's my other timer, then they're better able to help you. Does that answer your question?
I think that was a really excellent question. And then I'm going to kind of go out of order here in the chat. How do we impress upon faculty and staff the importance of mentoring? That came from Dr. Jones Branch.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's a great question as well. I think too, for some faculty, staff, well, what I use with faculty mainly is literature-based things, and I think it's about knowing the audience, right? So if you have folks who do a lot of research, they're going to want to see those facts, figures. How does this really impact? I think too, it's having those conversations about how does this impact faculty? Because, for example, if a faculty person, if they're trying to get promotion or tenure, for example, and mentoring doesn't count towards some of those things, we have to really ask those questions and look at some policies for different things. So I think for faculty staff, making sure that they know as well how they are making an impact on students, and that's going to some of the literature on, for example, students who see folks who look like them, or folks who understand them, and folks who make them feel valued on campus is so very important. But also looking at how are we also on campus helping faculty staff to be able to do those things in addition to what they are already doing.
And along those lines, there's a couple of questions about whether you have a list of must-read sources for mentors, or good articles specifically about using inclusive language.
Yes, I do. I actually have a list that I was getting ready for this one. I didn't put it on the slides. I have a, I guess I'll call it like a little packet of information for, specifically, it's called Advocating for Students of Color. It has a list of it's some worksheets and things that folks can go through, but also a list of resources at the end that folks can read at the end, as well as a list of resources, particularly for the LGBT plus community. And so, yes, we can, for anyone who wants it, just email me and I'll shoot it back out. Or I guess if I could just send it to you, Alyssa, you could send it to everyone on the call. I guess that could work too.
If you want to send me that, and I was actually going to ask you to send me your presentation too, and I can make that available to everyone as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Another question is from Dr. Lawrence. She asked, I mentored a lot of minority students. Who should students reach out to if faculty or staff say something racist to them?
Awesome. So there are a couple of places on campus that students, so our area, right, so students can report, it really depends on the underrepresented identity that the student heard something, but when you say specifically race or racism, the student could report it to our area. I know, for example, our area is looking at more streamlined systems so that students, for example, that question is a good one because, for example, some students might say, well, where do I even report that? And so the marketing piece in terms of letting students know where they can report it and clear systems for it. So that's something we are working on as well, the marketing part. But yes, a student could bring that concern to our area. And if it's something that, for example, in collaboration with the division, the student might need to connect with, our office may need to connect with various folks on campus, then we can do that as well. But as far as resources, we can also, if it's not our area, we can also refer students to the resource that they would need, depending on what the issue is.
Okay. I think Dr. Jones Branch, she asked if you could post it in the chat. I think she was meaning the list of resources as an option. If you have it available, Dr. Allen Moore, you can post it in the chat, or you can just send it to me and I'll make sure everybody has access to it. And
okay, perfect. I can see if I can attach something in there. If not, I'll send it to you, Alyssa.
Okay. That's all of the questions I'm seeing in the chat right now. If you have any more questions, anyone, now would be the time. There were a lot of great presentations and excellent job, Dr. Allen Moore. So I know you mentioned that you couldn't see the chat. FYI, you did a really great job. It was really informative, and I think we all took a lot from it.
Thank you.
So we're coming up to 10 o'clock. Our next Howler Speed session is at 10:05. I think we might take a short little break if you need to answer some emails or take a bathroom break or something like that. We can come back at it at 10:05 and start with our next Howler session. Thank you all so far this morning for participating. I think it's time to get started on our next Howler Speed session. So just to kind of go over, reiterate how this is going to work, there are 3 units in this session, and they will each have 5 minutes. At the beginning of their session, I'll start a timer, and it'll howl at you if you hit your 5 minutes. If you have chat or if you have questions during the presentations, you can add them in the chat. And at the end of the 3, after the last of the 3 presentations, we'll go over and do a question and answer session. that includes all of the units who participated in this group. So I think we are starting with IT and Blackboard, and I believe Heather and Carolyn are both here. So whenever you can share your screens as needed, and whenever you get ready, I will start the timer.
Okay, I'm trying to pull up my screen. Hang on just a second. Okay, so I am Heather Boothman, and I am the manager of our IT store as well as the IT help desk. I'm really excited to be here and for all of you guys to be here. So just to kind of give a very, very brief overview of IT related things that are available for you, for students, and then avenues to get help if and when that situation arises. So on our IT store website, we do offer different things. If they ask you questions about specific products, we have that available. We also have a support center where they can request an appointment for a virtual session, and we can help them with computer or, account issues or something like that. We did just launch our online store if you guys want to check that out. And tech tips is really kind of what I want to dive into. We put this together to try to help a all-encompassing section, so it would be a lot easier for you guys to either send this out or just kind of go from here. So some pro tips that we put together. These are common questions that we get, either students walking into the store, calling us, things that come across the help desk. So one of them being Microsoft Office. I don't know if everyone knows, but as an active faculty, staff, or student, you do get that free on your personal computer. So the My A State portal is a great source for software downloads to create a help desk ticket, but you would go to My A State software downloads to be able to get Microsoft Office. Connections with taking an exam, obviously wired connection is much more reliable. Resetting passwords, a lot of people forget that you have to reset that every 90 days. Some criteria that we require: making a strong password. Phishing attempts, we won't ask for any information if you feel like that's not legitimate. IT security is your best bet. Duo, getting a new phone or a new phone number, that all requires you to reset up Duo on that device. So just some common stuff through here. It's a great resource and avenue for you guys to utilize. We also want to touch on Blackboard. So I will pass it over to our Blackboard administrator and support, which is Carolyn. I think she's on here, so she's going to talk a little bit more about Blackboard.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Ponce. I'm the Blackboard administrator at Arkansas State University. The tips that we have for students for Blackboard: we want to remind them to log in regularly and check for new announcements for coursework. Check that they're using a supported operating system and browser. Many of our issues that students report with Blackboard is because they are not using a supported operating system or browser, or they have not cleared their browser cache and cookies. Clearing browser cache clears up 98% of the error messages. There's also a very healthy help tab for students and faculty and our users in Blackboard. We recommend checking out the help tab. All students are automatically enrolled in 2 courses when their Blackboard accounts are created. That's after they have registered for courses. This is a Blackboard orientation for students and an academic integrity class. These are 2 courses that they can take for free. It's not credit. The orientation tells them about how best to learn online, some tips and tricks for learning with technology, as well as the how-to links to the how-tos on the Blackboard help site. The academic integrity class just covers don't lie, cheat, or steal. But it's a short little course that gets them acclimated to the system. faculty support for Blackboard is done through the Faculty Center or A-State Online faculty support. Kind of tier 1 student support goes through the help desk because a lot of those questions are password related or computer related. And then I get kind of the tier 2 level where I'm actually having to look into a course and see what's happening. A lot of things I also do are checking for student submissions if those went in through correctly. I think that's gets it for my part. Thanks, Heather.
Okay, so just kind of touching on some more things. Like Carolyn mentioned, clearing your browsing data, that is going to clear up a lot of stuff. Things happen, technology doesn't work all the time, but there are some things that we can do to try to help. So we've just kind of put together a few things in here. There's some videos in there, tips and tricks, app recommendations, and then we just kind of went in through a little bit more on PAC support, tutoring, and housing. Those are some questions that we get, and if you have anything to add to this document or questions specifically for you guys that you would want to be added, feedback or anything that you guys have would be very beneficial. I'm going to end with putting our contact information up here. So if you have questions for either the store or anything like that, you guys are, if you want to take a screenshot of any of this or go to our site under that tech tip section, the help desk and Blackboard.
All right. Thank you, Heather and Carolyn. Up next is Counseling Center, and I think we have Amber Long. Yeah, Amber, you're muted. Let me unmute you here. Oh,
there we are. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Yay! Well, my name is Amber. I am one of the counselors at the Counseling Center. And so if I can figure out how to share this, I am not tech savvy, so we're going to try this. I just basically pulled up our website. The Counseling Center is a site or a service that is provided to all of our students free of charge. The only requirement is that they are enrolled in a college course and that they are a current student. But all of us full-time staff members at the Counseling Center are licensed professional counselors, which means we have been fully licensed to be able to do what we do. We also are an accredited counseling center that only a small amount of campuses or counseling centers across the nation have that accreditation. So we're very proud of the things that we're able to do and provide our students. And so because we are licensed, we are ones that can work with our students on a variety of different things. It's not just sadness or homesick. You know, we help students through a lot of stress during this time with the coronavirus and the COVID. It's creating a lot of stress, whether it's financial stress, whether it's, you know, just trying to figure out what our day-to-day life is going to look like, our plans. It's also creating a lot of stress in regards to school. And so regardless if we are on campus or if we are virtual, we are still doing our counseling sessions. And so I wanted to scroll down a little bit to where you can see that we have some TAO things that we are doing, which is more self-help kinds of resources for our students. But we also use this platform to be able to do our counseling sessions virtually as well. It's encrypted end to end, which means it's a safe and confidential place. Confidentiality is something that we take very serious with our students. And so it's just kind of an outlet for us to be able to continue working with our students, whether it's to help them through some difficult times, whether it be stress, whether it be grief, whether it be anxiety, depression, alcohol, help. I mean, it can be anything, or career. You know, we've got a lot of students who are coming to campus that aren't sure what they want to major in, or they're here and they still are trying to explore what's going to be the best ability for them in regards to majors. So we do a lot of career type work with our students as well. And so I'm going to click on here of our services. As you can see, there's the personal counseling, there's the career counseling, the academic counseling, and we still do a lot of outreach programming. And that is something that we will continue doing, whether we come in person to a classroom or we even virtually go to a classroom. So we're doing still some stress management workshops. We're doing some alcohol education workshops. We are doing some responsible decision making. We're also doing a lot of presentations tied around the COVID as well on ways that we can help get through this pandemic in the healthiest way possible. So as you can see over here is our information. Our phone number is 870-972-2318. If you have a student that wants to get started in counseling, have them contact us. We will send them the paperwork that they can fill out on, at their own convenience, and then we will schedule them a virtual intake session, and then we get them scheduled with a counselor that will be able to help them with the needs that they might be having at the time. Did I do it within the 5 minutes? I can't hear you.
You've still got a minute left, so we're
okay. Sweet. Okay. So a lot of times we have questions about, well, how do we get started? So kind of like what I just said, contact us. We'll send you the paperwork. What our intakes are designed for is just to kind of get some background information from our students about kind of what's going on. What are you looking for? How can we help you? And the thing that we really pride ourselves on is that everything we do at the center is confidential. And so the minute a student reaches out to us, we can never confirm or deny that we have talked to them or have seen them in a private situation. And so a lot of our students find that to be comforting in knowing that the things that they discuss with us kind of stay with us. Now, obviously, there's a few reasons why we would have to break confidentiality, and we would talk to our students about that. But it's a private, or it's a safe place for students to kind of talk to us and help work through some of those situations that they might be either currently going through, maybe a situation that they have gone through that continues to be kind of a barrier for them today, whether it's personal, whether it's academic, because personal and academic do blend. And when we're struggling personally, we're not going to do well academically. When we're struggling academically, we're not doing well personally. And so we help our students. We always tell our students there's nothing too big or too small to coming and seeing us for. And we really enjoy getting to work with the students. So.
All right. Well, we are good. If you're finished, Amber. Okay.
I'll wait for questions. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Okay. We'll do questions after the next session. I think we have Kelly Listenby here to talk to us about tutoring on campus. And Kelly, you should be able to share your screen at your convenience if you need to.
All right, let me pull that up.
Okay. And just let me know whenever you get ready and I'll start your timer.
Okay, I'm ready. Good morning, this is Kelly Listenby. I am with Learning Support Services. I am the Director of Tutoring. So we actually have 9 tutoring centers on campus. These are all their names. Some of them fall within academic departments. Some of them fall outside of academic departments. I'm over Learning Support Services in the library on the 3rd floor. But we have this cohort of people who are crazy about tutoring on our campus. So just wanted to kind of show you their faces really quick. I hope that you have met all of them. If not, they're great. They're your colleagues. Reach out to them. We have over 100 peer tutors on campus at any given time. So we kind of fluctuate between maybe 100 to 120 peer-to-peer tutors within all of our tutoring centers. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of how many tutors we have to support your students. So we do have a cumulative web presence on the A-State website. If you just type in tutoring to the search bar or find tutoring on the A to Z index, it will bring you to this page where each of our centers are listed individually. You can find our schedules, how to make an appointment. We'll actually be using in the fall a cumulative appointment system. All of our centers have opted into using a program called Penji, which will allow our students to make appointments online for all of our tutoring centers. We'll have both face-to-face and online appointments, and Penji should allow us to really quickly and easily get our students connected to tutoring. We'll have that posted here on our tutoring page, all of our individual tutoring center pages on the website, and then we will also have a tile in the A-State app. Katie Province is helping us with that. So our students should be able to connect to tutoring from their mobile devices as well. So we're really excited about that opportunity. We do host workshops throughout the semester. We host workshops on time management, things that are kind of skill-based, and then we also have content-specific workshops like for the praxis or the GRE. We just had a GRE workshop last week. So we have all of those available to your students. We also come in for classroom visits. And I've already talked about the online option for the we're always hiring students for desk jobs. We're hiring students for tutoring positions. So we always have our job application posted there as well. So we just want you to know that that's available to your students, and a little work hard, play hard. So we have a lot of fun with our tutors throughout the year. It's a really great group for our students to be a part of, to get connected with. And so I wanted to leave you with a refer, request, repeat. So this is my call to action for you. So if you're not sure, if you've never interacted with one of our tutoring centers, these are some great options for you. You can refer your students to tutoring. You can do that through PAC support. You can do that in conversation. You can do that with your entire class at the beginning of the semester or throughout the semester. Whether you're offering, bonus points or some sort of extra credit, we're keeping track of all of the tutoring that's happening in our areas. So if you go to that request portion, you can always email me or email one of our tutoring center directors, and we can send you a report of all of the tutoring that's happened specifically for your class in the centers just across the board, across campus. Refer your students to become tutors. If you have a student who's really excelling in your class, talk to them about what it might look like to be a tutor in the future. Referrals, faculty referrals are a big part of the way that we hire students. We want you to be able to trust the students that you're sending your students to. So make sure that you're making those referrals throughout the year. And then again, we can report attendance. We can come into your class, so we can do in-class workshops, we can do out-of-class workshops. So if there's something that you see your students struggling with, like note-taking or study skills, we can reach out and we can come into your class, or we'll be able to host that outside of class as well. And then just repeat. We do this every semester. It's a little different every semester, and we can work with you and accommodate the specific needs that you and your class have. Just call us, have a conversation, and we'd be happy to chat. That's all that.
You are right under time, Kelly. So I'm not sure. Okay. So now that we've finished our 3 sessions, we can go back and do question and answer. Let's see. If anybody, I think there are a couple of questions in the chat. Let's see. So Philip 2 asked if we could add information about Chromebooks. They Respondus in Blackboard doesn't work with a Chromebook. So Heather pointed out that that was listed in pro tips, but they can call it out better. And then Brad Rollins asked, could a link to the tech tips be more visible on the A-State website? And I think, Heather, I think you said that it was available on the A to Z index. Is that right?
Yes. So underneath T, it's actually listed under the tech tips section. It's that call to action is actually right there. So we can also work on adding that to the ITS page. So it will be on the store ITS as well as the A to Z index.
Awesome. So I think Gerard Lockhart asked if you could share the process or the turnaround time for when a student has to leave a message or a voicemail seeking support from the help desk.
Yeah, so that's a really great question. So our help desk that is on campus is Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. And then holidays, weekends, and after hours, we actually roll the phones over to someone who kind of covers that support. And they are a company that we do partner with who has basic information and is aware of account information. There is a little bit of security with their account that they don't have access to regarding like Duo. That has to be approved through us. So that could take a little longer if a student got a new phone or has a new phone number and is not sure how to go through that process. We did try to put as much information in that pro tips section as possible for Duo for them to know how to do that. The agent with the 24-hour support, they should be able to understand and communicate that. However, sometimes that doesn't get back in a timely manner. If it has to be routed to us, then it would be the next business day when we pick that up. If someone leaves a voicemail from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, all of those should be answered within the same day. We don't leave anything out there for the next business day or anything like that. Now, if somebody calls or sends us an email, they do get a automated response that goes back to them that tells them that they can call support as somebody will be able to answer that, whereas that email may not be addressed right away. So that they do get that. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Also, I've got a couple of additional questions too. If a student is in the middle of a test or an assignment or something on Blackboard and they get locked out, what should they do then? Should they call the help desk or Blackboard support? Like, what would you?
Hi, this is Carolyn. The student needs to contact the instructor for the instructor to reset the exam. I'm not authorized to reset exams as that alters grades. So the student will need to work with the instructor at that time.
Okay.
They also need to make sure that they check their internet connection, because if they're getting kicked off, it's usually because they're using Wi-Fi. So they'll need to make sure that they're on a wired high-speed internet connection or sitting as close to the Wi-Fi router as possible.
Okay. I also wanted to do a little plug for referring students in PAC support. You can send a referral to the learning support services in PAC support, and it gets directly to Kelly and her staff, and they reach out to the student. And then also, if you're using PAC support and submitting alerts like low test scores or missing assignments, things like that, if you're sending those flags on your students, Kelly and her staff are also receiving that information, and they reach out to your students based on the flag that you sent, and they offer them support and tutoring as available based on those flags. So another question for Kelly, if you're teaching a class that you don't currently have tutoring provided for, what should the instructor do then? Like, how to?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So there are a lot of subjects across campus, and while we offer tutoring for over 100 subjects every semester, we don't cover everything. So what we can do is, if a student is struggling in your course, or you see that this cohort of students is struggling in your course, we can actually pull in a tutor. So we can hire throughout the semester. So if you have someone who has taken the course previously and has excelled in it, then we can hire them as a tutor. Alternatively, if you have a student who is currently taking the course and is excelling in the course, but they're still taking it, we call those learning group leaders, and we can hire those students to help create study groups and to help your other students throughout the course. So we've got a couple of options. It just kind of depends on the specific circumstance, but we can hire all year long. So just let us know that that's what you need.
Awesome. Okay, if there are no more questions, if you have a question, you can add it in the chat and we can address it later in the day. But I think it's just about 10:30. So we're going to move on to the panel session, which is supporting special student populations. And for this panel, I have several guests. We have international programs, athletics, honors, first generation, and transition studies. So I think everyone is here on the panel. Let's see. If you have any questions for the panel, you can ask it in the chat and we can relay those questions to everyone. At this time, I'm going to ask that my panelists introduce themselves and what student populations they're representing. I think I see Gerard there. If you want to start.
Sure, I will. Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here on this morning. I work specifically in a unit called Student Support Services, which is a federally funded TRIO program that works with students who are first generation, students who are low income, students with documented disabilities. And we also work with students who have aged out of the foster care system and students who are functionally homeless. I know that's several different areas, but we take them all within those criteria in our program.
Okay. And Rebecca, I see you there too, if you want to.
Yes. Rebecca Oliver, Director of the Honors College. Of course, we work with all the students who've been formally admitted to the Honors College, students who are incoming freshmen that have a 28 composite ACT or higher and a 3.5 high school GPA or higher. We also have transfer students, either who come from other institutions, 2-year or 4-year institutions that transfer into our program. We have an application for that on our website. Students who are also current A-State students that did not qualify for admission as an incoming freshman can also apply for admission to honors. So we like to think of honors as a microcosm of the university, in that we offer a lot of the services and opportunities that the university offers, but we offer them in a slightly different way in honors. So of course we're doing admissions, scholarships, we have the Honors Living Learning community, we do advising, we have a registered student organization, the Honors College Association, we do study abroad, other special activities and events all throughout the year, leadership opportunities. So we have about 800 students in the Honors College at A-State, and they're from all academic colleges, departments. We have student athletes, students in Greek life, student government. We sort of touch every little corner of campus.
Awesome. And then Chikara, if you want to kind of tell us you and the population that you serve.
My name is Chikara Carter. I'm the director of the Transition Studies program. So in our program, we house all of those students who don't meet traditional A-State requirements for admission. So for now, that is anybody that falls below a 21 super score or equivalent on any college entrance exam. And the and is very important because we have students who don't meet the high school GPA. So the high school GPA requirement for traditional admission to A-State is a 2.75 high school GPA. So any student who falls below either one or both of those areas are admitted through the Transition Studies program. So we may have a student in our program with a 28 on the ACT, but they had a 2.5 high school GPA. Or we have those students who had a 19 on the ACT with a 4.0 high school GPA. So all of those students are encompassed in Transition Studies there in our program, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they have developmental requirements. So I think that was a common misconception before, that all students in Transition Studies are students who have developmental needs. And that is no longer the case because we have the and in there, 21 and 275 for traditional admission. Anything below that, they're welcome with us.
Okay, and I think Mallory is here.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Mallory, and I'm the Director of International Programs. In International Programs, we do have 4 subunits, which is our International Admissions and Recruitment, our International Student Services, our English Learning Academy, which houses our English as a Second Language program if a student doesn't necessarily have the English ability yet to go straight into academics. And we do have our Study Abroad unit as well. But our special population we're going to talk about today is our international students. And through our office, we actually have a great opportunity to see them from the very first point of initial inquiry and take them throughout the whole process, and even post-graduation if they're doing their employment in the US. So it's really neat that we get to see them their whole life cycle with us. We are happy to do that, but that also comes with a lot of support, obviously, that we have to provide them. So we do hold their official immigration record with the government, and that's probably the biggest support we have to provide them, especially right now. If y'all follow the news, there's a lot going on in that world. So trying to have lots of communication with our kids, make sure that they are updated as soon as we know something. But we also just do stuff sort of with orientation and programming. We have our own retention service as well that we work with, of meeting with all the first year students monthly, or meeting with any at-risk students. We do have an international student tutoring lab through our English as a second language program, that any student who needs help with some extra English ability or they need help writing a paper, they can also go to. But that's just a little bit about what we do in student services.
Awesome. And then I think we have Abby here as well.
Hey everyone. Yeah, sorry I don't have my internet's down right now, but I'm Abby Wilson. I'm Senior Associate Athletic Director for Student Services. And basically I have a staff of 5 that helps me with all student athletes. It can range from just admissions with registrar classes, upkeep with all the NCAA rules we do each semester. Advising, we work closely with all the advisors on campus. We have a mental health area for our student athletes, and we also do a study abroad. So basically anything that's kind of with the student athletes, we help with.
Okay. So we've kind of talked about the student populations that you each work with and how your unit is supporting them. So I guess my next question would be, how can we as the campus community help in supporting those populations as well?
Jump in, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think for us, and specifically for our student population, everybody kind of has this misconception that they're developmental and they don't need to work with any other population outside of us. But the truth of the matter is our students, some of them have 28s on the ACT. So they don't have any developmental needs. So they just have their FYE in our program, but they're with their other advisors, they're with their other professors, probably much more frequently than they're with us. So we would hope that you would treat them as if you treat any other student. So not that there's something wrong with them, or if there's anything that comes up with these students, you direct them back to us, because they're not necessarily developmental students. They just have FY here, they have an advisor here. So just treat them like any other student. But for those students who have those developmental requirements, that have developmental math or they have developmental reading, but they're still linked with their credit-bearing courses, or they have other credit-bearing courses, because of course we only have 9 hours of developmental requirements. So they're going to have to supplement that 15 other courses. We have instructors and advisors in other programs that have reached out to me when the students are struggling in their programs, and we encourage that. So if you have those students that are transition studies admits, and it's easy to identify our students because they'll have me in their list of support or their circle in the PAC support app. They'll also our FY holds on their account in self-service banner. So if you notice that they are transition studies admit and you just can't get through those students, we really encourage you to reach out to me or to one of our academic coaches that are on staff, because we may see them a lot more often than you will, and we have access to get to them quicker. So we're happy to jump in there and help you if they're not showing up to class, or if there's something going on that you just feel like they're not getting it. We would really encourage you guys to reach out to us, because we'd love to help them to be successful in all of their courses, not just their courses that they have in our unit.
Yeah.
If I could follow Takara and echo some of her comments, I think for our area, seeing that we are an application-based program, encouraging faculty to kind of get to know the student. If the student kind of self-identifies in a particular population in the area in which we serve, really encouraging them to possibly come by our office and to inquire about our program. If you want us to come and do a presentation to your class, we would love to do that. If you sense there's several students in your class that may meet our criteria, please invite us to come in and talk with your students, and we could talk candidly about the resources that we serve. Resources we provide. One of the things that I really like to share with individuals about student support services, it is a long-term academic support program. And so we love to get them at the very beginning, and we want to see them all the way through to commencement. Because once a student becomes a participant in our program, they remain a participant until they graduate with their degree. So we're consistently reaching out to them. We're updating them on campus policy changes. We are addressing maybe personal, familial issues that they're having. Maybe it could be other personal issues that they need some community support with. We try to deal with the whole student to help them remain focused upon their education. So if there's students that you know that meet that criteria, encouraging them to come by, reaching out to one of myself or another one of my team members. We don't care to send an email and say, hey, you know, you were referred to our program by one of your amazing faculty members. Stop by our office. We would love to tell you more about our program. Anything you can do to help us recruit, that's going to help us retain students at the university. And so that's something that I would recommend.
And to piggyback on what Takara and Gerard have just talked about, I think one of the misnomers about honors students is that because they are bright and high achieving is that somehow they've got it all together, that they know exactly what they want to do in life, they know what their major is, and that they're extremely driven. Honors students can be just as lost as all other students. Oftentimes they don't know what they want to major in. And that is because a lot of times when you've been getting straight A's since birth, and yes, that's a generalization of our population, but if you've been getting straight A's for a long time in your life and you're good at everything, and you've not struggled academically, it can oftentimes be really difficult to choose a major or to find a path that you want to go down. Oftentimes when students come in to talk with us about what they're interested in, it's a really difficult conversation because they say, well, I had this teacher in high school who said I was really good in biology and sciences, so I should be a doctor or I should be a pharmacist. And they just ran with it because they were like, okay, well, that seems like a good path for me. But they've really never done any self-introspection as to what they're passionate about and what they're interested in and what they want to accomplish in their professional and their personal life. Another thing that honors students often struggle with is that a lot of them haven't had to study very hard. And so we often say that your average B student in high school has better study skills than an honors student does. Honors students oftentimes have gotten by on their innate intelligence. And if they read something once or twice, they've kind of got it down. They don't have to study very much. There are some exceptions to that. But when they get to college, oftentimes they really run into what we call a brick wall, where they're really challenged for the first time in their life. But what they do have going for them is that you can't teach smart, and so they tend to develop those study skills. But sometimes it doesn't happen until midterms, their first semester, or after the first semester is over when they've kind of had a wake-up call. So a lot of our students have those challenges. Honor students also have a lot of anxiety that they really put upon themselves. Honor students tend to put more pressure on themselves than anybody else does, including their parents, teachers, professors, other people in their life. So we tend to see a lot of exceptionalities and anxiety within our population. And those would just be things I would ask people to pay attention to.
I'm going to echo what Takara and Rebecca both said. One, Takara mentioned the point about like her students want to be treated just like any other students, and that is very true for ours as well. You will hear a lot of times our students will be like, well, yeah, I'm over here in your office because so-and-so said I had to come see you because I was international. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how to help you, but I'll try to get your help. So keeping that in mind too is we are here to help them and support them, but we should not be the only resource for them. So please treat them like any other student as well and provide your resources to them. But also to what Rebecca's point about having high anxiety, especially right now with what all's going on with immigration and with travel bans, that's definitely true. But also just in a general sense, there are a lot of high anxieties when they come, thousands of miles to leave their friends and their family and come over here to study. One of the things that we usually get a lot is in their first semester, just trying to learn the American education system, especially if they're an undergrad student and having to take gen eds. Gen eds are not common across the world. They're used to going straight into their major courses. So we get a lot of comments about why do I have to take college algebra? I took math in high school, just having to explain that. But yeah, I think the big thing with them is just remembering that they do want to be treated like everyone, keeping in mind that they will have culture shock. And then also just keep in mind that they are bound by certain immigration regulations. So they have a certain amount of hours they have to register in. There's a certain amount of those that can be online versus face-to-face. That's even the same for this year because our university is going face-to-face. They still have to maintain the appropriate amount of face-to-face courses. And then just about employment, they do have very limited opportunities for employment because it can only be on campus. So this is my little plug for them that if you have an on-campus job, please consider hiring them if you are so able to.
I wanted to mention Mallory in the chat. Dr. Lawrence said that she mentored a lot of international students. What resources are there on campus to support Black or Brown international students to deal with the racism they encounter on campus and in the community? Many of them have never experienced racism or colorisms before.
Sure. It is more common than you probably think. It does happen. In our orientation program, we try to start there early on and kind of just inform them that, hey, you know, in the US, everyone values equality, but you're probably going to experience this still. So we try to prepare them. But what we've done when these situations come up is just ask the student to come share that with me if they feel comfortable. If they don't feel comfortable, they certainly can share it with any mentor or advisor on campus. They can reach out to me or they can, you know, work with them themselves. But when I find out about an issue, what I try to do is get like the student side and see what happened. We've had issues with places out in the community that they felt targeted. We've also had issues with people on campus that they felt targeted with. And so I kind of just, it's very case by case basis, kind of just listen to their story, try to get the other person that was involved, what their story was as well. And then kind of go from there. Sometimes that is getting Heather from Student Conduct involved. Sometimes that's getting Stephanie from Title IX involved. And sometimes that's just working with the chair or dean if it's a faculty member and getting it resolved that way. So I know that's not a great answer, but really it is case by case and just trying to listen to their story and get the appropriate person involved that needs to be.
Alyssa, if I may chime back in for just a moment, one of the questions that you asked, and I felt like was a very powerful question, was how can faculty support these students? When I think oftentimes about first generation college students, oftentimes they don't want to kind of be singled out or known for being first gen. They want to do their best to kind of assimilate to the crowd. So sometimes they may have a question that appears to be a no-brainer to you as a faculty member or kind of simple. And oftentimes I've heard students share with me, they've had a faculty member that they felt very belittled by or minimized their question with a very kind of snarky response. And I'm sure sometimes it's not intentional, but that student then begins to essentially kind of clam up and then no longer wants to engage. I think one of the things that I would love to recommend is just really being extremely cognizant and mindful that every question deserves a certain level of value and attention. And I understand that redundancy could be an issue because you've answered it 5 times in class already and another 7 times in your syllabus again. And I certainly respect that and I certainly understand that. But I think sometimes with that student being first gen, they don't know the language, they don't know the culture. They may have misunderstood or didn't quite understand that that was the explanation that you were providing to that question. So they may ask it again another way that helps them to understand. And so time and time again, I'm faced with some of those kind of conversations in my office. And so we're doing a lot of explaining about campus culture, campus expectations. We challenge them on, did you look in your syllabi? Oh, here's the answer, those kinds of things. So we certainly reassured them that the intentions weren't there. But sometimes, unfortunately, the student was a little minimized or kind of snarked at. And it does create a sense of not feeling belonged or not feeling valued in the space. And so that is something I would love for us to just kind of process and think about.
And to go along with what Gerard was just talking about, if Joe Clogston made the comment in the chat about oftentimes students don't want to challenge themselves if they're afraid of failure, and we have a lot of underachieving gifted students. I think we have a number of students who are underachieving because of lots of different pressures that they have in their life, whether or not that is working part-time or full-time. But to speak to what Gerard was just talking about in terms of first generation college students, and we have a lot of those in the Honors College as well, I did research years ago when working on a master's degree about sort of the opposite of the fear of failure, and it's the fear of success. Sometimes first generation college students, and I personally experienced this, was that I was actually afraid to succeed, because by succeeding and graduating from college and going on to get a graduate degree, I was making myself different from everyone who came before me in my family, on both sides of my family. And oftentimes when students go home for things like holidays or breaks, the folks that they're at home with, it's difficult for them to have conversations, or like Gerard just said, they may not value the same things, or their values may be changing. And that can be really difficult for students. And so sometimes students, and this is what my master's thesis was on, was about fear of success and self-sabotage among first-generation college students. Sometimes when they are so afraid of succeeding, they will actually self-sabotage and underachieve in order to not be successful. Sometimes students even drop out or stop out of college because they are afraid of succeeding. They're very bright, they're very capable and high achieving, but there's a lot of barriers that they have. And sometimes that's due to the pressure that they put on themselves, but sometimes that's due to the positive pressure that they get from their families. We all know students whose families are like, we're so proud of so-and-so because they're the first person in our family to go to college. That's a lot of pressure on students' shoulders. It may be positive pressure, but it's pressure and anxiety producing nonetheless. I think that's a commonality among a lot of our programs: international students, student athletes, honors, first gen, transition studies. They have a lot of pressure on them. Not that other students don't, but they have some additional pressures.
Yeah. There was an additional question in the chat that I'm sorry, Abby, just gonna quickly ask. Kelly Listenby asked if the first generation policy extends to first generation immigrants or first generational international students, specifically for the SSS program.
That is an excellent question. Our federal regulations state if the student is eligible to receive federal financial aid, they are eligible to be a participant in student support services. So if the student is eligible for federal financial aid, which does include Pell Grant student loans in particular, then they are eligible for student support services. Typically, our international student population does not meet that particular criterion, so usually they are not eligible for our program. I hope that answers your question.
So I'll speak a bit on student athletes. It's basically a piggyback of everybody who's already discussed their student group. I feel like we're all the same in our unique way. And I want to thank everyone on this call and on campus, because without your commitment to our students and your help and willingness to speak with us and even communicate with the different groups and the students themselves, we wouldn't be as successful without you. So one, I wanted to thank you guys for that. To student athletes, yes, it sounds like it's a great thing to be an athlete and you're always in the limelight. However, it can be very stressful. They start at 6 in the morning and go straight till 8 or even 9 p.m. at night, and it's a schedule. There's a set schedule that they don't get to choose. They're traveling on Sundays because the Sun Belt Conference chose their schedule. So they follow what people are telling them to do, and so they don't get much time to make their own decisions in a sense of when they're missing school and everything in that. So I want to just kind of reiterate that it's important that you understand they're not choosing to miss school. It's an obligation because they are a student athlete. They try extremely hard in the classroom and on the field. Like I said, every single day they're working extremely hard. And with the NCAA and also ASU, they have to meet specific rules each semester. And so if they work extremely hard on the field and in the classroom, and then for some reason have some type of hiccup, everything they've just put out in for themselves for that entire semester could be taken away with one thing. So I just kind of want you to realize that it is a very, very stressful environment.
Oh, Abby, I think we
Student athletes. We do
Abby, I think you're breaking out. We can't quite hear what you're saying.
some of the
Alyssa, while Abby's working on her technology, I would love to go back if I
students on
could.
campus. They're open to cars.
Oh, okay. I think it might be done now, Gerard.
What I would like to say, and this is just another tidbit that I want to encourage faculty to process just a moment when they're working with students in special populations. Just kind of take a moment and reflect upon when you were that student yourself and you were kind of going through the trenches as a student, and kind of show a little grace with students as they're going through, because they're not going to be perfect. They're going to make mistakes along the way. And there's several faculty that I've had an opportunity to interact with that have been very accommodating and very understanding to students. And so I'm not saying that that's something I feel is an issue on our campus, but I do want to provide that gentle reminder of really how critical that is for a student. If they do make a mistake, albeit there's a lesson that must be learned, but can we be that soft landing for them? Because they have a lot of pressures, a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainties that they're experiencing. And so oftentimes, as Dr. Allen eloquently discussed earlier in her presentation, my office can't be a catch-all for everyone, or I need you to be a link to help me with the student. And so us serving as a link, we could be much stronger together versus than that student feeling so unsupported in their environment that they retreat back to kind of our offices for that support. So if we can be that link for them, iron kind of sharpens iron in those situations. And what a great way we can work connectively or to get collaboratively to help a student, one, overcome that barrier of failure, then two, provide a great landing for them to learn how to not do it again. And then two, that kind of allows us to remain or look a little bit human to our students, where we may share stories of success or failures that we had as an undergraduate student and say, hey, you can get past this. This was a bump. It was a big bump, but it was a bump and we can certainly get through it.
Absolutely. I think we've got just a couple of more minutes. I just wanted to ask one more question. We've kind of talked about some of the barriers and for your students, and then ways that we can support them. But one additional question is, what kind of environments do your students thrive in? Like,
I think I said it already and I'll start. I think my students excel best in an environment where they're not necessarily continuously celebrated for, like, oh, you showed up for class, yay. Well, that's kind of expected. But a place where they can make mistakes and not necessarily be completely ostracized or minimized for those mistakes, but a space where lessons can be learned in a safe environment. Also places where they feel a sense of value and they feel a sense of belonging, like it matters that you're here and it matters that you have an opinion, because there are some instances where students may not articulate themselves the best, but their point is relevant to the class discussion. Instead of those things, we're celebrating a student in those situations. So that would be my comment.
I'll agree with Gerard that our students thrive in an environment where they feel appreciated and feel welcome and feel loved. And that's why I'm so concerned about how things will look this fall. So I think we have to be mindful of these students haven't been in school probably since early March. So we'll see them in the fall, but they won't have the opportunity to just join in our offices or just drop in like they've been able to do before. So I think we have to be really intentional in reaching out to our students in other ways so they still feel that togetherness and that support, because for some of our students, they don't have that outside of here. We are the only mentors, the only support, the only avenue to success for a lot of them. So I think we have to be cognizant of coming up with alternative methods so that we don't lose those touch points that we've had with them in the past. Because I've had students take naps in my floor between classes, but that won't be an option this fall. So what else can we do so that they know that they have a support system, that they have a home base to go to when things are hard everywhere else? So that's what we're working on actively in our department, is how do we still maintain our commitment to these students and our access to them and their access to us without a barrier on the desk or an opportunity to just drop into our offices. So I would encourage everybody to find other ways to still stay connected to our students, because they need us probably more now than they've had in semesters past, because they don't have the opportunity to just walk in or just come in here and just plop in a seat and spill their guts. So how do we still maintain that connection?
I agree with everything that Gerard and Takara have said. That applies to honors students as well. I would say that honors students, when they thrive, it is because they're being pushed outside of what they think is possible and what they can accomplish. Oftentimes, the worst thing for an honors student or a bright, high achieving student is to be bored academically. If we don't set the bar a little higher and we don't push them out of their comfort zone, oftentimes they will just kind of kick back and they're bored, and then they don't apply themselves, and that's when they tend to run into challenges. So I would say they thrive when they're being pushed. So if you are a faculty member or a staff member on campus, don't be afraid to push them a little bit outside of their comfort zone so that they know what they actually can achieve.
We'll see if Mallory has anything to add. If not, I think we are just about coming to time for our next session. So I just want to thank everyone who participated in this panel: Takara, Mallory, Abby, Rebecca, Gerard. Thank you guys for your insight, and Jill Clarkson in the chat with the extra resources. That was really great. I think, let's see, I think Sharice Jones Branch mentioned Zoom office hours for encouraging that connectivity with your students. And then Melissa Jackson said that we're providing an opportunity for students to drop in through Zoom and address specific topics considering the university climate, but more specifically, this is to remind students that they still have access to us. So those are some really great ideas about how to keep those connections.
Alyssa, this is Rebecca. There was one question. It was from Philip too. I think we missed it. It said, are international students allowed to go all online this semester from home? And I just thought that.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, it was farther back. And so I don't think we got to that.
I did private message Philip, but just so everyone can hear the answer as well. If home means home country, yes, they can go fully online from their home country, but they cannot be in the States at like their apartment or their home in the US and try to do all online, since we are a face-to-face institution this fall.
Awesome. Great information. So I think with that, we will move on to the next Howler session. We're just a little bit ahead of schedule, but I think that's fine. As long as, I'm not sure, is Christina Kostick? Christina, are you here? Yeah, here you are. Okay, so we can go ahead and get started with the Howlers. I'll reiterate how these are going to work. There will be 5 minutes for each of the 3 presentations this session, and I'll have a timer going that will howl at you whenever we hit your 5-minute mark. And then if you have questions during the session, just add those in the chat and we will do question and answer at the end for all 3 of those units. So Christina, whenever you're ready, you can share your screen. You should have the ability to share your screen if you need to. And you can let me know when you get started and I'll start your timer. Christina? Mallory, I think your audio might be messed.
No, sorry, I was on mute. I had taken a phone call at my desk. I apologize. Was there a question?
No, it just showed that you were still providing some feedback. So I think whenever you mute now, we should be good.
Okay.
I see Christina here in the participants, but I'm not hearing her. So why don't we, Tiffany Johnson, Tiffany, do you want to go ahead and start the session off?
Sure.
Okay.
Good. Well, good afternoon or good morning, everybody. My name is Ms. Tiffany Johnson, and I am the Director of Career Services here at Arkansas State University. We are located in the Ring Student Union Suite 2167, but we are offering virtual services, again, because we want to connect with our students. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Just a little bit about the mission and why we do what we do in career services. So the mission of career services is to serve as a bridge between students, alumni, and employers during the career planning process that provides programs and learning strategies in an effort to educate, enhance, and enrich lifelong academic and career goals. So we have 4 core services that we provide, like I said, either in person or in a virtual space. So one of the things that we do is we conduct career development presentations and workshops that can be requested through faculty, through staff, through registered student organizations, or we may host our own independent workshops. Those workshops include information about, career development or career planning. So how to build a resume, how to dress professionally, how to network, how to conduct yourself within an interview. So anything that is career related, we are going to provide that service to the students and actually talk to them about it. And it's usually a two-way street. We're talking, but we want them to provide us some feedback or ask questions that they may have. We also host career fairs and special events. So this year, traditionally we host them in the union. We host 4 a year, but this year what we will do is we're still hosting those career fairs, but we will host them in our new platform called Handshake, and I'm really excited about it. Handshake functions the same way as Higher Ed State that was powered through Simplicity, but Handshake is such a more robust system. So we will actually get a chance to host our virtual career fairs in there. Our third core services that we assist students, everything we do centers around this third core service, and that is assisting students obtain work study, part-time, internship, and full-time opportunities. So we have developed what we call a 4-year plan. So each year, when I say freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, so all 4 years, we want to make sure that students have a career plan. So during that freshman year, it may look a little different than that senior year, but every year it builds. And what we tell students is to look at it as a puzzle. So those are the pieces of the puzzle to make it complete. And then once you graduate, you should have all the necessary tools within your tool kit to be successful in finding a full-time opportunity. We want students to get connected with us as soon as they step on campus. So we can develop that career plan for them or assist them in building that career plan. And then also looking at ways to develop that those work or transferable, what we call sometimes power skills. So many students would say, Ms. Tiffany or anyone on the staff, I don't have the necessary experience that an employer is looking for. So I share with them that you can find it through opportunities on campus like work study and part-time, and then also taking what you're learning in theory in the class and putting it into practice in an internship. And so taking that information and adding it to the resume, again, we will take them through a step-by-step process. And usually when we take them through that process, it is called what we call a career coaching session. So we can do that in a virtual space as well. We have tools like we're using today, Zoom, WebEx. If the student just wants to do a phone interview, we can do it that way as well. But again, we want to make sure that they are connected. And as I stated, I want to move a little bit more into Handshake. So we're connecting with students in Handshake. Within that system, we can already see who's connected with us. We currently have about 600 students already on the platform that has actually activated their account, and that has been since we launched the program in the last 2 weeks. Currently, we have about 2,000 employers across the nation in that system as well. We can actually look at the analytics every day. So as I stated, it is a more robust program. Not only can students connect with us if they need in the office, but in a virtual space, but also we have social media pages. So we have Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. And again, we want to make sure that we are connecting with them. So within those sites, we post events, programming, career tips. One thing that I really love is whenever we know of a student who has obtained an internship, or let's say an RA position or campus position, or even a full-timer thinking about going to graduate school, when we know that they've obtained that, we want to put them on Spotlight. So we will create a Spotlight edition on our social media pages, and then also sometimes we will email it over to faculty. So again, we just want to make sure that not only are we teaching the students, but we're going to highlight their accomplishments and share with their peers on what their students are achieving. I think sometimes the best things that we could do is allow those students to share their story, and then another student will get motivated and say, hey, well, if Karen can do it, anyone can do it. Or if Jessica can do it, then I can do it as well. We have the same career plan and same major, and our path looks very similar. So I know that I can do those great things as well. So the goal is to connect with our students and keep them connected to our partners, as I stated, the faculty, staff, and then our external partners off campus. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Tiffany.
You're welcome.
And then we will do chat for the questions at the end. If Elizabeth is here. Oh, I see Christina just popped.
I got it back. Yeah, sorry. I used my computer in my office and apparently it doesn't have a microphone, so didn't know that part. I have a camera. So if you want me to go, I can go ahead and do.
Yeah, you can go ahead, and you should be able to share your screen as needed. And then once you get ready, just let me know and I will start your timer.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Okay, so our office we're kind of like, I guess, in the community with career services, access and accommodation services, and counseling center. So we're all that kind of one area there on the second floor of the student union. And we offer services like helping a student fill out their FAFSA, helping them with the work study questions, things like that. Because a lot of times they'll ask, I'm interested in work study. I'm wanting to apply for a job. How do I get it? That's one of our most common questions now on campus. We do help with scholarship questions. A lot of times a student will have a scholarship like the lottery or some other institutional scholarship. And they'll ask us, what happens if I drop a class, or the whole new credit to no credit? That's been a big question over the last couple of months, of how those things can affect their scholarships. And so some of it we've kind of navigated some of that because it is new to us, because we don't know how is it going to affect their GPA, how is it going to affect their academic record. Excuse me. So this year, one thing to know, students that had an institutional scholarship through A-State, normally they have to have 30 hours a year plus their required GPA. But because of the COVID situation, people transitioning to online, some students were not very good at handling that transition. And so unfortunately, possibly had to drop a class, or maybe weren't doing as well as they had before because of the online format. So any student that had a scholarship through A-State was automatically renewed for the next year. So even if they maybe didn't meet the GPA requirement or the hour requirement, they were renewed for the next year automatically. So that gave them kind of a little reprieve to keep their scholarship for one more year. So that's been a question about, for our students as well. We are trying to, with the whole COVID situation, create a social distancing, policy for our office, as far as we're only limited typically to 3 students in our office, which is very hard for us because we see a lot of students this time of year. So we are creating a wait while booking appointment system so they can do that. I know that they had mentioned, I think Miss Melissa, the drop-in through Zoom. We're going to do something like that. We're going to allow kind of I guess like when you go to the doctor, at the sit call, it's something like that, where if they have a certain question between like 8:30 and 9:30 in the morning, we have like a sit call for financial aid. And then we'll have an afternoon one from 3 to 4. So if they have any kind of financial aid woes there, we can try to meet them in person if they want to. The other thing we have seen a lot of recently with the COVID is that students' parents' financial situations have changed. They've been laid off. Some of them are just not working. Maybe they're working minimal hours because, like, I think I had one family, they were going from making $100,000 a year to making $200 a week. So some drastic changes. And so unfortunately, we've had a lot of that with our students, and we can help them by looking at their current financial situation. And maybe they weren't getting a Pell Grant before, or maybe they were only getting a partial Pell Grant before. We can reevaluate based on their current financial situation and help them to possibly get more Pell Grant or get the Pell Grant in the first place. So we're doing that, and the government, depending on what kind of programs they come up, they had the CARES Act this past past spring. There could be something on the works with the fall or this upcoming fall and potentially spring where there is more money. And so we will potentially, they have to have a FAFSA on file. That's the key thing. So if you see a student that doesn't have a FAFSA, I would recommend doing it, because even if they're not Pell Grant eligible, the way the program worked this year is, I believe, Pell Grant students got 900, non-Pell Grant students got 300. So there was at least something for everybody as long as they filled out a FAFSA and completed all their requirements. So it's very important, just even if they're not going to use any money from the FAFSA, just fill it out, because there might be an option there later. And that's what the question we had afterwards is, when all these people were hearing about the CARE Act and social media had it everywhere, it was buzz everywhere. People were saying, well, how do I get that money? How do I get that money? And unfortunately, they didn't have a FAFSA. So we said, well, you don't have a FAFSA, so we can't help you, unfortunately. So we want to make sure that they really do that. But with the whole WebEx, we do that Tuesdays and Thursdays from 2 to 3. We have kind of an open forum on WebEx, and there's a link on our website where students, if they just want to come in and drop by and ask a just random question, we can do that. If they want something more one-on-one, that's where those Zoom meetings, where if they want to make an appointment, they can either come into the office to make an appointment, or they can do a Zoom virtual appointment if they prefer, it's a social distance from us. And that's kind of it. We're just trying to roll with the punches here and just best serve our students, but also we don't want to inconvenience them, because like I said, that we do tend to have a lot of students, because when you deal with finances, that is something that's very personal, and it can be a very, frustrating situation, especially now. And so we're trying to do our best just to keep it as least frustration as possible for students and provide the best services that we can.
All right. You actually came right up on to time, if that was the end.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great.
I'm a professional like this all the time.
So we will move on. I think Katie is going to present on behalf of student involvement, Katie Province. So Katie, you can share your screen if you need to, and then let me know whenever you get started, and I'll start your time.
Perfect. I am just telling me I can't share my screen yet.
Oh, I think.
Let's see.
That may be something on my end. Give me just a second.
Okay. While we're working on that, I'll give you guys a quick introduction. I'm Katie Province. I am the Associate Director in the Leadership Center, and we do student involvement, all sorts of different types of student involvement. And so I wanted to show you guys our website just a little bit, so you'd be familiar with the areas that we have in our office, and then just give you guys a little general info about how we are responding to COVID-19. So our office encompasses fraternity and sorority life, also known as Greek life. This is obviously a huge population of our students, and we are proceeding with recruitment this fall, and so groups will be allowing students to join. Even in the midst of the pandemic, we are finding a way to make that work, and so it's going to look a lot different. There will be a lot of virtual aspects to recruitment, but if you have a student who's looking to get plugged in, and you think a fraternity or sorority is for them, then they can still go through that process this fall. We also house the Student Activities Board. They are our event planners on campus, so they plan fun things like Welcome Week, Homecoming, just different activities for the students throughout the year. And they are planning a hybrid model of Welcome Week, and so some events will be in person and some will be virtual. We are trying to do as many in-person things as we can in a safe manner, so that will give students some fun things to come out and do once they move on to campus into their residence halls, and once they come back to Jonesboro. And so we're doing things like a drive-in movie and some different just fun activities for Welcome Week. We also are home of student government, and that is where students can really be an advocate and a voice for what they believe in and what they want to see on campus. We are still working on whether those meetings will be in person or virtual, but we'll have that information soon. But we are opening up freshman senator seats as normal, regardless of if we're virtual or not. So incoming students can apply. We have 7 seats specifically for freshmen who want to advocate on behalf of their class. And so we will still do that process. Volunteer Aid State is our organization that is focused on service and philanthropy. And so they do things like host blood drives and operate the campus food pantry. So the food pantry has been open all throughout our time that we were working remotely. It has been serving a lot of students still during this time when they're facing financial hardships, I'm sure. And so they do a lot of great work. We have been running that by staff. Staff have been working the food pantry through the summer, but we will switch this fall and let the students take that back over, hopefully with some new guidelines. And we are actually working on an online ordering form where students or staff would be able to order their food online and just swing by and pick it up curbside. So hopefully we'll be able to make that happen in the next couple of weeks. We also host some activities like Mom's Day and Family Weekend in our office. Those will obviously look different this year, but we'll be sending out info on those soon. And we have a couple of programs like Global Student Leaders and things like that in our office, which obviously are TBA at the moment. My biggest piece of advice for you all and for your students would be that connecting to the university in at least one way, in at least one organization is really the goal for every student in our eyes. We think that you will have a totally different collegiate experience if you will get connected with at least one group in at least one activity. And so the things I mentioned, are big commitments. Being in a fraternity or sorority, being on student government, that's a big commitment, but not everybody has to make a huge commitment. You can simply be part of a registered student organization. So our website has a list of all of those. There are over 150 of them. There are things from the Alley Cat Club to the Quidditch team to Active Minds, which is focused on mental health. I mean, you can find anything that you want to be a part of. And so we really encourage students to find at least one thing that they want to be involved in. And, take that one thing and do it really well and then add on to it from there if you're more interested in getting further involved or interested in having a leadership position on campus. One other thing I wanted to mention to you all before we take questions is the A-State Student app. This app is a really great resource for students to find resources all over campus, not just about our office. So there are links in there to all the different offices you've heard from today: PAC support, financial aid, career services. They can get that information right on their cell phone. And so we think that that's really great. But the big piece of the app this year is that there are virtual communities there. There are groups they can join. They can ask questions. They can talk to their peers. They can get answers even from faculty and staff. You all can download the app and interact with them as well. And so we think that those virtual communities will be really important this year as the students are navigating a new virtual collegiate experience.
Awesome. So were you about finished? I think we may have a little bit of time if you wanted to finish up.
Oh, that's great. Just about the app, if anybody has any questions about that, one thing I'd like to mention is if you would like to be an administrator in the app and kind of use it on the back end, that option is available. We can set you up with that and you can, edit the content for your area. So that's an option if anybody's interested.
Okay, and we have a couple of questions in the chat. Gerard Lockhart asked, Christina, can you speak to if students apply and receive NCs for spring 2020, will they have to appeal for their aid? I know scholarship students are being grandfathered in.
Well, because the federal part, there was no kind of caveat for that. So if they are not meeting any of our academic progress requirements, by the end of spring, we would have notified them through their A-State email account, and then they would be allowed to appeal. So we have had several that have COVID-related situations, and it's not necessarily related to the credit or no credit, it's just in general. So the no credit will not affect their GPA, but it will affect their completion rate, which is one of the factors we have to look at. But we do take that into consideration that, going to an online format is not for everyone. And so that is something that is considered as part of their appeal.
Okay. Also, Nikki Kemp, to all of the services, I think if we have other Howler sessions who have been available today, all of these services have done sessions in FYE, and they come as guest speakers to our classes. With COVID, will you still be coming to classes to speak this semester as guest speakers? So I know for me, I'm more than happy to come to your class and talk about PAC support, and we can do that virtually or we can work out the details of how that would work. But yes, for PAC support, I'm still super interested.
Right. And that's career services, we're available as well, virtually or in person with the proper social distancing. And what I would do is drop a link in the chat box to where you can actually, submit a request for a presentation.
Okay. I think that's kind of the general consensus with everyone, is that we're all still interested and we can work out the details. You feel free to contact us individually, or you can contact PAC support and I'll help you get in touch with people as needed. So if there are any other questions, put them in the chat. I actually have a couple of questions. So for Katie, if there's a student who's not feeling connected in campus, what do you think would be the best way to refer them to find a group to connect with? Because I know you've mentioned several avenues of places where that information is, but is there someone who could kind of talk to them and help them find something that would work for them?
Yeah, absolutely. We would love for those students just to stop by our office or send us an email, either one. Elizabeth is really familiar with all of those RSOs because she works with them on a daily basis, booking space and making sure that our list is updated. And so she could talk them through sort of what they're interested in, what might be a good fit for them. So we'd love for them to come by and see us. They can also access that list in the app. And so if they want to scroll through the app, they can see a student that they can contact, or they can join a group where that student organization is listed. They can join that group and just post a message and say that, they want to join, they're interested, how do I get connected to this particular group? So they can do that in the app. They can do it by coming by our office. Philip too just messaged me and said the answer is they should always join Phi Beta Lambda. That's true. You should definitely join Phi Beta Lambda. They're the biggest chapter in the nation. I know that. Be proud of me, Dr. Tu. I keep up with it. So they should definitely join that. And there are groups like Phi Beta Lambda who are open to any student. It doesn't matter if you're majoring in the College of Business. They don't care. They would love to have you come in and be part of their organization. There are a lot of organizations like that. So even if it's something that the student sees and they're like, well, I don't think I necessarily fit in this group, you always do. We can find a group that you will always fit into. And so there are a lot of groups that are looking for members of all sorts. And you guys know we have religious organizations, we have academic organizations, we have something for everybody. So we'd love for them to come by our office or reach out specifically to Elizabeth Rouse.
Another question, Tiffany, you may have covered this in your presentation, but can your office help students get connected with internships?
Yes, absolutely. So we work with employers across the state of Arkansas, and we want to make sure that the students are aware of that. So we work very closely with faculty as well. One way that they can do that, as I mentioned earlier, Handshake. They can connect in Handshake, and we've already sent out automated emails, and a lot of individuals have already connected. But with that, we've sent out announcements for individuals that are hiring, which would include internships.
Awesome. So if there are any more questions, now would be the time. I think that might be it. Thank you guys for joining us, Katie, Tiffany, Christina. Really appreciate it. And then we're about 2 minutes ahead of schedule, but I think that's fine. Steph, you're here, right? I think you're.
I am.
Okay. So we're gonna move along to Steph Lott, Title IX and Institutional Equity Coordinator, who's going to be presenting today on a couple of topics, and I will let them go ahead and get started.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to say thanks to Alyssa and Dr. Simons for putting this on and for the invitation to speak. I really appreciate everyone being here today. So we'll start with supporting participants in a Title IX process. As you know, Title IX is a federal law which ensures a discrimination-free environment for members of our campus community and in our educational programs. I partner with many of your areas to facilitate programming and educational opportunities across campus. I also advise Impact, a registered student organization, which facilitates peer-to-peer education in the areas of bystander intervention, consent, healthy relationships, and dismantling rape culture, among other topics. But today I want to specifically speak to you about the ways that you can directly support participants in one of our Title IX processes. First, I want to say that regardless of what role someone has in our process, the process in itself is a serious one and one that can emotionally and mentally impact folks in a number of ways. No person reacts the same way or experiences the process in the same way. So there is no prescribed behavior that you're anticipating, but there are general things that you can remind yourself of, remind them of, and can employ as tools to help you respond appropriately and from a neutral, supportive place. So I want to share some of those with you. Thank you, Alyssa. She's my clicker today. I appreciate it. So with due process, so every person is guaranteed this right. We have a very prescriptive process with exact deadlines and response times. We have a detailed Title IX grievance procedure, and our process is always a very transparent one. So if any party shares with you that they have a question but can't find the answer to it, they're curious about a part of our process and how it will work, anything along those lines, please encourage them to contact me directly via phone or email, and I will happily spend time making sure all their questions are answered. We always sit down with participants at the very beginning and go through all of these things, but as I said, no person experiences this process the same way, and sometimes the information we provide gets lost between one ear and the other and needs to be repeated or explained again, and that's always okay with us. If you have a concern over a party's emotional state, never assume that if a party shares with you that they are experiencing an incredibly difficult emotional time in the process, or that they feel overwhelmed or depressed, that they've shared that with me or my investigators. Generally they do, but not always. I sit on the care team with Alyssa and many others that are here today, and we communicate openly about the emotional struggles and needs of Title IX participants that may warrant a counseling outreach or some other support from a different area on campus. So please always feel free to contact me directly and let me know about a conversation you had with a participant who shared something with you that you want to ensure is known to us in an official capacity as a university, so we can make sure we touch base with those parties. Resources. All parties are provided on and off-campus resources that they can utilize at any time if they're applicable. A party does not have to file a formal complaint or have that formal complaint move forward to a full investigation in order for them to receive those resources. We have a complete list on our website that is very detailed and includes a range of on-campus to local community to national resources. If you have one that you don't see there, I'm always open to those, so please feel free to send me those. I love to add new resources that I didn't otherwise know about. And refer somebody to our office if they're seeking a resource that's not listed on our website, so that I can research for them maybe a comparable resource or see what we're able to provide. Which will take us into talking about supportive measures. Something really important to note before we go into this, we previously used a term called interim measures, and now it will be called supportive measures under the new regulations released from the Department of Education in mid-May. But not all resources can be recognized as supportive measures, but not all supportive measures may be recognized by someone as a resource. So if we use a supportive measure that may look like an interim suspension, certainly nobody's going to consider that a resource, right? But if I refer a person to the counseling center, or we use a no contact directive between two parties while we do an investigation, that could be considered a supportive measure or a resource. So let's talk about that a little bit more. Supportive measures can and will look different for every single person, and that is okay. They're individual to the party, to the case, and to the facts available to our office at the time that we enact a supportive measure. It is possible that a party requests a supportive measure and that it is not enacted. An individualized assessment of the facts available to our office is conducted every time we receive a complaint, and a decision based on those facts coupled with the experience and training of our office determines how we move forward. So we will explain to a party always why a supportive measure was either enacted or not enacted. And again, if there are questions on that, always please feel free to refer somebody back to us. Advisors. So we have always recognized and will continue to recognize the right of every party to have an advisor of their choosing present with them for any portion of our process, any conversation. This doesn't have to be a lawyer, but it certainly can be. It could be one of you if a party requests you and you agree to that request, and that's perfectly fine with us. Under the new regulations released by the Department of Education, there's a certain portion of our grievance procedure called a live hearing, where the complainant and the respondent are required to have an advisor. If they don't have one, we will provide them a list of trained advisors that they may select from. And so this is really good information for you to know if you receive questions about that from a party, because this is a new change. And again, this information is always shared with them, but I want to make sure that you all have this information as well, because you often get so many of these questions before I do. Let's talk about listening and not discussing. That's another really good suggestion that I can give you. The most singular important thing that you can do to support a participant in our process is to listen. You should not discuss the report, the case, or any other items with them. You shouldn't ask questions relevant to the report or the case. All parties are presumed not responsible unless otherwise determined to be responsible based on a preponderance of evidence at conclusion of our Title IX grievance procedure. So we would ask that you maintain that same thought process in your interactions with all parties. It is entirely possible to support everyone involved equally if we simply listen and do not discuss. One of the most difficult things that I've heard as feedback from campus constituents over the years is, I want to show an alleged victim that I believe them, but I also want to show an accused party that I believe them. And this can be incredibly challenging if I know them both. I fully understand that perspective and sympathize with your feelings. What I can share with you is the most important part about being a practitioner in this field is the difference between my lens and someone else's who doesn't practice the work, is the ability to discern between feelings and policy. I've read and heard and seen everything imaginable at this juncture from working with Title IX in some capacity over the last 7 years. As human beings, you can hear and read and see a lot of things that make you feel a lot of different ways. But the challenge of the profession is to utilize our training and experience to discern between feelings and what is or is not a policy violation. I don't expect anyone on this call to be able to do that to support a participant in a Title IX process. But what I will ask of you is not to focus on showing someone that you believe them. Rather, focus on actively listening and conveying to the person in front of you, whether they're a complainant or a respondent, that you see them and that you hear them. The best response is, what do you need from me and how can I support you? Then refer them to our office for additional resources as needed, or just listen. Lastly, I'd also ask you to always remember that you have a responsibility to acknowledge that you never have all of the information. One of the most valuable lessons I've learned from working in Title IX is that our office never has all the information. We can have some of it. We can have different information than what was shared with you, but none of us ever has all of it. So be an active listener and be a great campus resource for referrals as needed. Never be afraid to pick up the phone and call me. We need your partnership and support in our process, and we thank you for the role that you may likely play in a participant's process at some point during your time at Arkansas State. Mandatory reporting. I think it's important that you all know we did not make any changes to our mandatory reporting obligations through the new regulations released by the Department of Education. So if you were considered a mandatory reporter before, you still are. These persons who reside in supervisory capacities are considered mandatory reporters, like deans, the chancellor, vice chancellors, department chairs, all faculty members, any employee at the university police department, and any employee in athletics, Greek life, student activities, student conduct, or human resources. So before I move on to discuss different ways to enhance your knowledge on gender and identity, are there any questions that I can help answer related to the Title IX process? I see one from Gerard. How does one become a trained advisor? Are there sessions available? That's a phenomenal question, and I love that you asked that. I wish that I could make everybody a trained advisor, but we have a specific process that we've outlined for that. It is currently going through SGOC as proposed, but we have identified that we would like the members of the Diversity and Affirmative Action Committee for the university to be those trained advisors. This group would, again, be trained in training that we would identify. And as those members roll off and new members roll on, again, that committee would be those persons. Our office has already requested to know if they would be interested in that, and unanimously they told us that they were. And so that's the group that we feel would be best in that role and that we've selected. Is that possible to change in the future? Absolutely. Does that mean that they're the only parties who can be one of those advisors? No. A person can select any advisor they want. If they don't have one and we provide them a list, then that's the list that we're going to give them as members of that committee. So I hope that helps answer your question. Are there any others?
I don't see any more in the chat. If you have questions throughout, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll kind of take another time at the end and go back to those.
Perfect. So I'll talk about now enhancing your knowledge on gender and identity, and we'll transition to that. Both of those areas, gender and identity, are incredibly complex, ever evolving, and so important in making sure that someone feels valued and that their personhood is respected. So I'm going to talk to you about some of the ways that I think we can do that together. And a lot of this may overlap with some wonderful things that Dr. Allen shared. And so I hope not too much, but if they do, that's okay. That means we're just spitting the same knowledge. So let's start with introductions. Introductions matter. They are incredibly important. And I want to start by talking about the importance of names. So it's important that we pronounce names correctly and that we recognize the name a person tells us and that we honor and respect the permission that they've given us in their introduction. Introductions are our first interaction with someone, our first opportunity to exchange mutual respect for one another. A friend of mine shared this with me recently, and so I think it's a perfect time to kind of share this with you all as well. He was actually my RA when I was an undergraduate student, and so he was at work and he introduced himself to a customer. His name is Donald, and he tells the customer this. The customer responds, "It's nice to meet you, Don." And he said, I'm sorry, you must not have heard me. My name is Donald. How can I assist you?" And the customer responded, "Oh no, I heard you. I just always have a habit of shortening names like that." This small moment tells both parties how much respect the other person is willing to show you in their interactions. Now, I know some of you might be listening to that and think, I can see why she did that. And you might, not consider that as kind of a disrespect, and it might be common to hear people shorten names like that. But I encourage you to reconsider the amount of importance that you give to a person's name. Your name is your identity. And if you view someone else's name, the correct name, and correct pronunciation, as importantly as we all view the number on our paycheck we anticipate every 2 weeks, I assure you that you might view that example a little differently. So I want to briefly talk about a campus resource related to name changes should you as an employee or a student reach out to you and express that they want to change their name. If a person wants to legally change their name with the institution, they can contact Kelly Carrick. I believe that's how you say her name. If it's not, somebody please correct me. Kelly Carrick in the registrar's office. Kelly will work with them to complete the appropriate paperwork. Kelly then notifies IT so that IT can update their email address. Email addresses or updates by IT like that are only completed twice per year. So after the spring semester grades are posted or around late May and before spring semester begins. Information in the A-State app is fed from Banner and should auto-update that information. I know this because Katie Province recently helped me understand this, and so thank you, Katie. All a party needs to do is sign out of the app and sign back in, and it should then auto-populate. If a staff or faculty member wishes to update their email address due to marriage or divorce, for instance, they can do that by contacting Human Resources, and then we will assist them with that as well in a similar process. So if we continue discussing identity and mix in gender with it, we're likely to end up talking about personal pronouns. But before we go into that, I want to be clear on what I mean when I say gender for the purposes of today. Gender, although people often use biological sex to assume gender, and while they can be connected, is not always connected. You can start by defining gender with sex, but it definitely does not end there. A person's gender is a very complex relationship where their body, their identity, and their social gender interconnect and are interwoven. So by body, we mean the biological aspect, and by identity, we mean how we feel about ourselves and how you name your gender. And by social gender, we mean how you present or express yourselves visually and identify within society and in our different social circles. Personal pronouns, with regard to that, the most important thing I can tell you is that you should either call them pronouns or personal pronouns. I would advise against using terms like preferred pronouns. This kind of language can communicate that there was ever a choice to begin with. And for many folks, pronouns are not a choice. They are a sense of being. They are at the core really a piece of someone's identity. So now I'm going to complicate this a little bit more for you. Pronouns do not always correspond to the gender that the way you assume they do of another person. Pronouns are not indicative of how a person should present visually or express themselves to you. You may hear a person's name, hear their pronouns, and be looking at them presently as they stand in front of you and feel as if you have just met 3 different people. You have not. You have met one really awesome person just like you who is giving you permission to know them and respect them. Just because the information you've been given doesn't align with the information you had pre-stored in your brain doesn't mean anything is wrong. We must always challenge ourselves to really unlearn any information or behavior that prevents us from fully seeing, respecting, and honoring the person that someone is giving us permission to know. So what happens if you use an incorrect pronoun, or you mispronounce someone's name, or you misgender someone? Some of us have anxiety about this. I totally get it. That is absolutely normal. I'm going to give a very easy way to decrease your anxiety and hopefully help prevent any mishaps. First, never assume someone's gender or pronouns, right? That one's super easy. Always attempt to use gender inclusive language. We talked about this earlier. Dr. Allen has some really great resources, but use terms like folks, they, them, people, person, individual. Those are all really good examples. If you do make a mistake and you notice it, or you are made aware of it, you simply apologize. This can look like, quote, "I'm sorry for misgendering you. I should have used gender inclusive language. I'll do better next time. Thanks for telling me," end quote. You should correct yourself even if the person who was misgendered or identified by the wrong pronouns is not in the room. This can look like, Alex uses the pronoun she to the group that used the wrong pronoun, and then you simply move on. We're just contributing to the conversation and making sure that we circle back to information we know versus information we've assumed. Important considerations for faculty. I think it's a really good idea to have students write their names they're giving you permission to call them on a piece of paper individually and have them return it to you if you're in person, or separately in an online format. Circulating a piece of paper around the room for others to see is not best practice and can have an adverse impact on the student. Another element to avoid is singling out a student in your class who presents as, maybe very self-aware or proud and open about their identity. If it's an identity that, especially mainstream, might consider unique or outside the norm, quote unquote, I want to caution you that just because the student is presenting a confident self to you does not mean that they wish to be openly praised for it, or asked for their opinion as a single representative for an entire group of people, or that they want it publicly acknowledged. This can have an adverse impact on the student also by making their self-confidence and self-awareness seem performative, or rather that it can have the unintended consequence of becoming performative for their peers and places a burden on that student to educate others instead of encouraging others to educate themselves. And I always love to say that Google is your best friend, and it truly is. So that takes us into something that's really important also, that is person first language. A lot of us have heard this. You can talk about persons with disabilities when you talk about person first language, among other things, and it's really no different if you're talking about special populations like the LGBTQIA community. So everything that I'm about to say, we could unpack and discuss for hours, but I think it's also important for each of you to take some of these things and walk away with some research to do on your own to kind of help expand your own knowledge. These reminders are based on the concept of person first language and the concept of acknowledging and owning a pre-existing identity, as opposed to seeing identity as a series of choices or options. So I would advise you to use transgender, not transgendered. Use gender affirming surgery, not sex change. Use assigned female or male at birth, not born a boy or girl. Use pronouns, not preferred pronouns. And to say things like they are queer, not they identify as queer. None of us has a singular identity that is more important than another. Our identities are layered and they embody our personhood, and they're all important. Our identities are not choices. Identities are either realized or actualized, or they're suppressed. So I encourage everyone to continue reading and learning about these important topics to provide the best version of yourself as a support system for folks in our campus community. It's not easy work, but it's important work. And so with that, I'll take any questions that maybe that has conjured up, and we'll go from there.
All right. See, Dr. Jones Branch included a link to mypronouns.org. If I'm remembering correctly, I think that's a place where you can create like a link that says your pronouns, and then it links back to kind of an explanation of that pronoun.
Yeah, that's a great resource. It also gives you different tenses and whatnot.
If there are any questions, Steph, I really appreciate your presentation today. It was really informative. Thank you very much for being here.
No, thank you. Again, I appreciate you and Dr. Simons and everyone for your time today. This was a really beneficial service to our community. So thanks for inviting me to speak.
Absolutely. I think it's just about time for closing. I believe Martha, Dr. Spack is here. If she wants to jump in.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hey. Hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking with us this morning. We've heard such valuable information that I think we can all utilize as we move into this next academic year. All of our presenters were good, and I think it just reinforces the work that we're doing at A-State that's supporting our students' academic success. So we thank you all. Today, there was mentioned a couple times about the 100 Mentors program, and I want to touch on that just a little bit. You know, we learned lots of tips about student advocacy, and we're creating a new program this year, really focusing on that concept. And the 100 Mentors program are a group of volunteers who are going to be partnered with first-year students. And the goal is that they make a connection with those students to help shepherd them through that first year, and then hopefully their connection will maintain throughout the 4 years that the student is here. But really, those mentors are going to be partnered with those students and making monthly connections with them, monthly contacts, in an effort to really get to know them, but also ensure that they have the resources that they need to be successful. Several different individuals talked about the same concept, that our students arrive here with, you know, so many different things with them, some skills that are helpful and some that may contribute to them maybe not being as successful. And so we want to take this information we learned today and collapse all that together to really help our students move through these 4 years to degree completion, which is really their goal. So this retention program is new. I appreciate all of those who volunteered to serve as a mentor this year. If you didn't and you're interested, you can certainly reach out to me. I'd be happy to add you to that list. You can just shoot me an email. We will be providing those mentors with some additional information, basically like conversation talking points for each month, and some other resources here in the next couple weeks before classes start. And you'll also receive your list of students with their contact information. So just to kind of wrap up what we heard today, really I have 3 takeaways, and I'm sure you have some similar, but the first is just the importance of connection. That was a common theme today, figuring out a way to connect with your student, and doing that is different for every student that we work with. But I think it is so valuable for us to find a way to connect with them and find commonalities and find ways to communicate what that is best with them. We talked about lots of different options for that, and I think we all have experience there, but we know that's number 1. Number 2 is knowing our resources, and we shared a lot of resources today, and many of us on this call have been at ASU for several years and have experience with a lot of our campus services, but these are ever changing, just like our students are ever changing. And so staying up to date with those resources and knowing the best way to connect. We have a couple of shortcuts with that. One is PAC support that's been mentioned several times. Another one is the A-State student app. Every campus, department, and service is listed in that app. And so if you're ever stuck, that's a good place to go to get some really quick assistance for a student. The last kind of helpful tip, I think, is follow-up. You know, we talked about different challenges that students face, but ultimately we want to continue to press them, and that pressing changes depending on the student you're working with. But that constant follow-up reinforces these concepts that we heard today, like being welcoming and showing care and being interested and creating value for the student. Because the time that we invest demonstrates that care and concern that we have. And so we want to definitely make certain to continue to follow up those connections that we made. Today's been great. And again, I want to thank all of the presenters. I think this is an opportunity to ask any final questions that someone may have. And I'm sure Alyssa has some closing comments for us as well.
I thought that I saw a question. In the chat. I must have missed it, but also Martha, in terms of the 100 Mentors program, I think you just mentioned this, but you'll be sending suggested topics or questions or just like resources to the.
We'll be sending some suggested topics, and so it'll be split up by month. And the plan for this year, and we're open to feedback, the plan for this year is to provide some monthly conversation starters for review with your student based off the things that we typically see in a cycle of an academic year. So there are always issues in August, September, October, November based on the academic calendar. And so we'll be sending some talking points there. Now, you're not bound to use this solely for your connections with your students, but it's really just there for a guide and really to get you to kind of begin to think about ways to connect and conversation starters. So that's coming. We'll also provide you all with some like interest information. So how do you learn about your students? How do you, what are some topics like what they enjoy to do with their spare time, or where do they like to eat? Because all of those kind of things, when you're engaging them in some things that are personal to them, it's easier to connect, number one, but it also gives you some common ground to talk to, because some of these students are going to be really chatty with you and others are going to be evasive and we're going to have to hunt them down a little bit. So I think as much of information about the student that we can get will be helpful too. So you'll receive both of those. And along the semester, if there are questions or concerns or resources that you feel you need, I'll be here to kind of answer those questions. Dr. Simons will be available as well to share more with the group as we build this program.
Amy Pierce asked in the chat, will the topics be different than those covered in FYE courses?
They'll be very similar, but a lot of what we're going to be doing is taking this more of a personal level. So we'll be asking the students specifically about, or the suggestion will be to ask the students specifically about their transition to college during that first month, or as we get closer to midterms, asking more specifically about their classes and relationships with their faculty, just so that it's spurring them to think a little bit more about their specific journey at A-State and where they're being successful and maybe where they need to be a little bit more mindful. But it will follow kind of some of those same patterns of FYE just because the topics are similar.
Okay. And then Holly Hall asked how the students are paired with their mentors. Is it random, or do you look at items such as major, et cetera?
Well, we're still working on that process. I think the thought was that it wouldn't be totally random, that we would work to try to partner a little bit so there was a commonality there. But, you know, if there is a particular population that someone wants to work with, you can certainly let me know that, and we'll keep that in mind as we begin to pair up the students with faculty volunteers and staff volunteers.
Okay. And then Jill Clogston asked, how will the students be notified of this program? Like, are they signing up for it, or are you targeting?
We're targeting first-year students. So every first-year student will be assigned that mentor. And so we have about, I think, 1,250 first-year students right now. And so we will work to assign those students to the faculty and staff mentors. They'll receive some information. Most of our first-year students live in residence with us. And so when they arrive to campus, there is a welcome packet on their bed in residence life, and so some of that information about the 100 mentor program will be there in that welcome packet, and for those that are commuter students, we'll get that information to them as well.
Awesome. And I think that you just answered Nikki's question as well. So she would ask how, if they're going to be told about it in advance of meeting with that mentor. So
yeah,
awesome. If there are any more questions, just throw them in the chat. I think that is pretty much all we had prepared for the day. I think today was very helpful, really informative. There was a lot of information coming in, but I want you all to know that I'm going to, we'll have, this has been recorded, and so we'll have the video probably hosted somewhere on the website that you can go back and refer to, or send it to staff or whoever to be able to view it. And then I'm also going to ask that any of the presenters who had a presentation, if they want to send that to me, or any additional resources, I can make that available to you all participants as well. So thank you all for being here. I hope you took away a lot of information. I know I did. So I think that's it. See you guys when we see you.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Good job, Alyssa. Enjoyed it.
Thank you.